Hello, welcome to Waiting for Game, podcast presented by Melee Stats. I am your host, Gimme That Wheat, and we are back. We took a 1 week break and we savored it as much as we could because we have a whole ass load of content to talk about not only today, but coming up. This is the unofficial start of summer, or no, the official start of summer. And we are looking at probably the official start of the summer of Smash. Right, we have been seeing a ton of big events, but this weekend kind of really showed not only the talent at some of the majors, but just the regionals and just the bustling nature of Smash as we get into the wonderful month of summer. So we are here today with a person who I had the lovely opportunity to talk to in person this past week. One of the best people to talk to when it comes to just rankings or obviously melee in general. Just one of the more interesting melee people that you can talk to. I'm of course talking about my good friend Edwin Budding. What's going on, Edwin? How's it going?
It's going great. It was wonderful to see you last weekend. It was wonderful
Mm-hmm.
to, explore the magic world of hiking that I ignored for so much of my life. But we have too many regionals to talk about to really jump into our personal lives. So I want to welcome DarkGenex to the show. I'm really excited to have you on. How you been? How's your week?
I've been doing great. Excited to be here, and was excited to see both of you at the Trail Invitational as well.
Mm-hmm.
Always nice seeing you both. Always a pleasure. I'm doing great.
Yeah, for sure. Trail Invitational is, to let the cat out of the bag. It was an event that we all went to and personally had a good time, but we need to talk about some of the bigger. We have bigger fish to fry, and that is the one that happened all the way over on the West Coast in La Mirada, California. This is the second iteration of Wave Dash. Wave Dash last year was known for being hot and sweaty, and someone who shall remain unnamed threw a chair and broke a chair, and J Mook basically could have had a win over H Box and decided not to. And This one felt entirely different for a lot of different reasons. This we were not attendees of this event, but this is a different location and just kind of had a different feel in terms of like what Wave Dash represented and how stacked it was. And I think one of the funny little connections between the two is that to spoil it for anyone who doesn't know is that this is one that Jmook came home with. And Edwin, we were obviously hanging out while this was going on, but I did get to catch some of Sunday, and I don't know if either of you did, but little bit of a cakewalk it seemed. What were your thoughts on that, Edwin? Because I know that the Jmook Kadoran sets that we've seen before have looked pretty much in Jmook's favor. I don't know if you have anything that you saw here that felt differently.
Yeah, honestly, this is going to sound really horrible. I think Kadorn has gotten so much better at the game. You see it in his
That does sound
play.
horrible. How
You s-
how you're such
well,
an asshole, dude.
Marth hater
well, it's gonna
extraordinaire.
well, yeah, Martha Hater extraordinary Edwin Bunning, and I think I hate to mention that because it looks like Jmook has just completely leveled up. It seems like the rate that Kadorn is taking to get into the top five or whatever we want to consider the next echelon. Kadorn, someone who's always hovered around top end, been sort of a contender to make top eights. How far he makes in those top eights kind of depends on the brackets that he draws. And it seems to me like he is making long-term changes in his gameplay to really enter that stratosphere of major contention, right? But as we're seeing him take that jump, I mean, at the same time, we're seeing Jmook go from that spot of major contention to just being this dominant favorite over so many of the other players. So it's almost like you have these two players in different echelons and both of them are improving. So as fast as the second guy is improving, it really just feels like Jmook is apparently sans ices, and we'll see how Jigglypuff
Yeah.
works in the future. It really seems like this guy is just skyrocketing. I mean, I was impressed with the sets against Kadorn, but we've seen Jmook trounce Kadorn before. I was, particularly stunned at just the consistency in which he held off Fiction, the way he dismantled the rest of the bracket. I mean, the Jmook we saw of Wave Dash, if as as boring as it is to say, if we see that Jmook at any event, I'm not. I don't think you could say that there's a single spacey player, Marth player, those matchups that we've seen him really excel in. He's broken through that barrier that I think a lot of Sheiks, Plup included, have not consistently broken through, of really just looking untouchable in those matchups. And with Jmook, it's really extraordinary, and it's just. We could say this about so many tournaments that he does well in, or so many tournament victories that he's had. But if you're Jmook coming off a weak event at Tipped Off and coming off not doing so great at Battle of BC either, this is the kind of event that you want to see, and this is the kind of event that you want to have. It looks like he hasn't missed a beat.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Kudoran was definitely someone who was very impressive. But you're right. I mean, and Aklo as well, and they're basically most of the entire the top 8 was incredibly fun to watch. Just a lot of these players who are basically like the same skill level, just duking it out. But you're right. Yeah, Jmook really showed just like a pretty dominant performance. And the question is, how does he do against some of his problem matchups? And it's not for lack of talent at the event. DarkGenex, you are famously known as someone who, I don't know if you know it, but has shitty taste. So at least when it comes to Melee, we just watched a bracket where Zain barely made top 8. Zain, lost to S2J. Zain, barely scraped by Chango, and a player who's outside the top 100.
Yes.
And burying the lead here, but maybe we shouldn't even call it Zain at all. Maybe it was better known by the moniker "Don't Test Me," because this was a Roy run. Zain, after signing up, decided that I believe he just said the competition wasn't what he thought it was, and instead of seeing kind of the faded Icy's versus Jmook, we ended up seeing a different character than Icy's, different character than Marth. We saw the Roy. So I have to ask you, as a connoisseur of the annoying and the hated aspects of Melee, was this complete chicken shit, or was there some charm to going Roy at an event like this?
So a couple of things. The first thing is that if I had a nickel for every time Magi beat Zain in 2023 under interesting circumstances, I'd have 15 cents right now. And I think it's crazy that it's happened like 3 times in a year in general, but the fact that it's happened 3 times in the last half year is kind of crazy. Some of it was with Roy. I think that if you are burned out, or if you feel like you're not having fun with the game, at the end of the day, even if you're playing this game for a living, or you're playing this game as some sort of spiritual journey into the depths of your unknown for self-improvement or whatever nonsense you're telling yourself, I think that at the end of the day, you started playing the game because it was a game. You wanted to have fun with it. You saw someone doing something cool. You wanted to follow in their footsteps. No one is entering Melee with the intention of wanting to be like super rich or famous off of being really good. If you're doing that, you picked the wrong game to do that in. But if Zain wants to have fun and play Roy for whatever reason, he is allowed to do that. And I think that it is very funny when he beats people with his Roy. I am fine with him going Roy at Wave Dash 2023. I think the reasoning for it, if it is completely for the reasoning in his tweet that it wasn't stacked enough, I'm not really a fan of that, honestly. I think that a lot of players over the last couple of years have expressed discontent with attending regionals as a result of not being able to beat anyone and only having something to lose. Cody talked about this after the function Nightclub VIP when he lost to Swooper. As another example of this, at a Wisdom Melee, I'm just dragging Cody's name in the mud right now, but Cody lost to Zamu, but I don't think the Cody Zamu loss is going to affect where he is placed on the summer ranking or at the end of year ranking. He beat Zamu to win that tournament at the end of the day. If Zain really did not enter the tournament as Marth with, I guess, intentions of rank, again, I don't know the inner thoughts of Zain's psyche. I'm not a fan. But we don't really know. We have one line of a tweet. Not a lot to speculate off of that.
Well, we'll move on to the more hater contingent in this little TriCast. What do you think, Edwin? What do you think about the Roy?
I think if the Roy does great, we're all fans of it. If it gets 7th place or 9th place and beats Curve, That's what I think.
I think it did exactly what is best for Melee, which is beat Curve, hilarious. No matter how you feel about Curve, one must admit that is hilarious. Close set with S2J, because I think it would just be sad in a way if S2J lost that, but close meaning we go, damn, that was close. Chango set, hilarious. I do think it's easier if we don't give Zain or Chango a Zain win. Just easier to, comprehend stuff, and it would happen in the funniest way. And then, yeah, it would have sucked if Zain beat Magi with Roy. Like, no one would be happy. I mean, maybe
I think Zayn would be happy. G-Subs would be happy.
Yeah, I mean, if he made a big run, then it'd be pretty cool. But I guess the point I'm saying is like just purely selfishly from a spectator standpoint, like if that Roy somehow made it to winners finals, then wow, that's a huge flex, right?
I think
if
Melee
Roy
is worse if he beats. Well, because what would it be? It would be he beats Magi. Then does he go through Akla? Who is it? I don't.
And Roy Link.
Yeah, that sounds horrible for Melee. I think what happened is the best possible thing to happen for Melee, which is Roy beats funny characters. Roy loses to real, top tier players. And not to say anything about the people who he beat, but there's different echelons too.
I think as long as it doesn't become like a regular occurrence,
yeah,
it's reasonable. Like I think that Plup's run at CEO Dreamland is a equivalent of this, where he just won Luigi. He beat I think Drugged Fox and got 5th.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a fun.
Well, right?
Nintendo. Did he beat Nintendo?
He beat Drug Fox, Nintendo, and Ginger. I think those are the three.
Very solid run. Lovely to see Plups Luigi, and it did not become a regular thing. As long as Zayn continues entering tournaments for the rest of the year with Marth, I feel like no one will have any complaints.
Exactly. I don't think it's anything to really care about. I do think it's a little annoying when seeding's already out and you're the number 1 seed, and you go, oh, I don't think I'm going to know my man. But if it happens once, who cares? I'm not going to particularly fault him for that. A couple of interesting things that did happen at this tournament was kind of something that I alluded to earlier, which is you have this tier of players here. You've got Fiction, you've got Aklo, Kadoran, someone who we're going to talk about. Johnny is a player who's always been particularly good. And then you've got also, players who are kind of like Magi, like breaking into that higher echelon. And a player like Noel, who has not made a top 8 at a regional like this in a little bit, or a major like this. Oh boy. Don't want to start that discussion. But yeah, it's always super cool to see how these players interact. And even if this was a tournament where it felt like a kind of a foregone conclusion as to who was going to win, and then when we actually watched it, I feel like you could figure it out from basically the beginning of top 8 that J-Mook was going to win. I still extremely interested in watching these players duke it out, because as we arrive to the summer rank, this is going to have implications. Aklo, Fiction, maybe Outside Chance, Kadoran especially. These are players who are fighting for top 10. The top 10 right now, in my mind, is not set. Like, we have LACS, we've got Gommel, we've got CEO, which we're going to talk about later, but we've got a bunch of things that could really drastically shift what's happening. And for players like Aklo and maybe even Magi, that is a new place to get into. So these events are always super interesting. Was there anything in particular that stood out to you, Justin? I know that you were commentating Trail Invitational. I know you were busy with that, but did you get a chance to go back through the bracket or put through any VODs? And was there anything that stuck out to you?
Yeah, so there were a couple of things. I mean, most people are aware of the Chango run, so I don't think we need to talk about it too much. There's 2 players I do want.
Let's get into a little bit of it, because this is a pretty. I don't want to say historic run, but this is a very notable thing that happened here, right? So, yeah, give us a little background on Chango and how he got to 9th place.
So Chango is a player who, I don't know where he is right now, but he has traveled between the Pacific Northwest and Mexico before. He's been in the game for a very long time, and there was one year when he almost made top 100. He had I believe at Genesis, beat both Chu and Hugs. I don't know if it was both at Genesis. I know he beat Chu at Genesis by timing him out. And I know he beat Hugs at year 2. I think that might have been a Battle of BC. But he's been around top 100, on the brink of top 100 for a while. So he's not a nobody. And prior to this point, hasn't really had the best year. I know at DreamHack San Diego, he lost to Zaza, formerly known as Midnight Blue. So this run where he beats Casper, who's been doing really well this year, probably going to be top 100, and then beats Axe in winners finals. Axe has been, I mean, historically struggled versus Puff, specifically HBox, but this year has been a completely different story. I mean, losing to Chango, losing to SDJ, and then in losing, I was going to bring this up as one of the players, but lost to CPU Zero as well, lose of this tournament. So Puff seems to be like a very, very massive problem for Axe. I mean, we talked about it being a problem for Jmook potentially, but we are seeing the Puffs get better and causing Axe trouble. Well, this is about Chango. So Chango beats Axe 3-2. He loses game 5 to Null, and then he beats the second. He beats Westballs 3-0. And then he beats the second player who I was going to bring up as someone to potentially look out for, which is Melee Stats' very own Koopa Troopa 895, who had a pretty good run of his own, which we'll probably talk about in a bit. And then loses game 5, last hit, basically, like, he actually won the set. Like, he literally could have just won the set.
Came down to RNG.
Came down to RNG, decides to rest. I don't think Zain could have drifted back on stage. I might be mistaken on that, but he rests Zain in the apex of his up B. Zain goes flying off the top, Team Rocket style, is turning into a star as Chango's vulnerable, sleeping Jigglypuff drifts to his death and dies for 9th place.
Truly something you have to watch to feel. The crowd going wild in the clip that I saw. Yeah, just the absurdity of like Roy versus Jigglypuff and just how it ends. Yeah, I don't think there's any funnier way for, like, what is, I can only imagine, Chango's best tournament performance from start to finish. I don't think there's any funnier way for that to end. But yeah, no, I think Chango is an amazing player to pick to point out here. And yeah, let's talk about Koopa Troopa. You know, he is a player who we have helped get the things, and you know, obviously Combo Breaker was his first tournament under the Melee Stats umbrella, which was a bit of an underperformance for him. He definitely did not place particularly near his seed, but we see a little bit of a bounce back here. Edwin, as our resident Marth lover, I don't know if that makes you good to talk about Koopa. I don't know how the other Marths feel about him, considering he does like there was a local this week where he covered Falco side B to ledge by doing runoff up air and then up bead to hit the Firebird. So I don't know if like that type of behavior actually makes Marths like them. But yeah, so Koopa is a player who I think is a really interesting person to talk about. Yeah, what do you wanna get into him a little bit, Edwin?
Yeah, so Koopa, the story of Koopa this year is that there's been two kinds of Koopas, right? There's the Koopa that we see at Melee in Progress. You see it at SoCal local. The Koopa that takes the world by storm and beats like Lucky and Curve dominantly and wins a tournament, right? Then we saw Koopa at Combo Breaker, and like you said, he took a bit of a step back in terms of his performance. I think he would consider an underperformance as well. Then starting off at this tournament, which is obviously in his home region, features a bigger out of region talent pool and everything. He actually suffers like a loss early to Blarg 257, who's a pretty solid all around NorCal Fox. But again, the kind of matchup that I think Koopa might have wanted to see heading into this type of event. So I think that caught him off by surprise. But after falling to him early in winners, he actually makes quite a bit of a loser's run to 13th before falling to Chango. So he beats Forox as one of his first opponents. But if you take a look at the bracket, like right before top 8 and top 48 or whatever, the slew of opponents he beats there are it's actually pretty quietly impressive. So he beats Typhoon in the Marth Ditto, which I would consider a pretty significant accomplishment. We've seen Typhoon go back and forth with Umarth before NorCal. Definitely not a Marth player that anyone should sleep on. Someone who, you know, just missed top 100 last year. So another similar caliber player. We see Koopa defeat the Sleeping King of SoCal/Texas, Billy Bo Peep, 3-1, another Melee Stats player. Another very underrated player who we've seen basically by the eye test look like a top 50 player at Bemmy's in the past. Certainly has the potential to reach there with enough events and enough strong showings. And then after that, we see Koopa defeat Franz, who we saw, you know, take the world by storm last year. So Koopa, after suffering a bit of an early setback, it was nice to see him have a good loser's run to 13th place. I think he can definitely build on this kind of performance and work his way really into that like top 75, top 51 to 75-ish range. Like sort of like how Grab did last year. And I swear I'm not just picking another melee stats player, but I think that's kind of the archetype of Marth player in terms of results. Koopa's Marth gameplay is a little different. Yeah, Koopa's Marth is that guy's crazy. He's like nerd crazy though. Like there's different kinds of crazy Marths. Like you have the Lunary Marths who like turn their back to their opponent for some reason and do like Waveland off reverse single hit nair. And then you have Koopa who just like tech chases with up smash or edge guards with up air for some reason. Yeah,
it's like the acidics to Fro 116 scale.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Where does he land on there? Justin, where do you put him?
I think closer to Fro than acidics, but like probably in the 40 to like 45, 55 range.
Yeah, I think he does it, and he does the Fro stuff in a very acidics way.
We should add another. Yeah, maybe there needs to be a Z-axis to this. No, he definitely is a player who, of course, we're going to talk about it in very glowing terms. Otherwise, we wouldn't have put money behind him to get him out to things. But I want to say that this is completely unbiased when I say I think that anyone who is curious about Koopa's play should watch his streams. He streams very often. Basically, anytime Zain plays anyone, he has new VODs to go over. And he is just a very analytical person when he's watching these VODs. And he has a lot of like things that he does in like Uncle Punch to try to figure out like how to contend with like Yoshi double jump and these other kind of really interesting situations. He's labbed out a lot of things. And then you watch him play. And it becomes so much more hilarious that, like, he's a labber and he doesn't just F smashing a neutral all the time. Now, he is a very interesting player to watch. And, between Wave Dash and Melee in Progress, which we saw last night, where he kind of went through Billy Peep, went through Squid, went through a couple other players. Definitely someone who I think is a player to watch out for in the future. I'm excited to see where he goes from here with more traveling. And that being said, Koopa Troopa's run was amazing. Chango's run was amazing. I struggle to say that was the strongest showing from a quote-unquote unknown player that we saw this weekend. And I think it actually happened in a card shop in Plainville, Massachusetts. Now, we were all here. I don't know if we were all witness to it, but while we were, I don't know, eating Thai or doing whatever we were doing, commentating for the non-lazy of us, something pretty interesting happening, which was a player who we all know is super good entered a tournament for what feels like the first time in forever. And I'll cut to the chase right now, is that Chef Rock ended up getting 9th place at Trail Invitational, which might not be a shock to a lot of people, but it's like, he's a very funny player. He's kind of everyone who knows about him knows that he is amazing and does not view this as a large run, but not everyone knows about him. So he defeated Zamu and Mech to get to 9th place, losing game 5 to Bobby Big Balls after losing to Casey, who was also on a bit of a run in winners. And I guess as a little addendum to that, kind of beat Mech up pretty hard at the post Trail Invitational local on Monday.
And Zamu too.
Zamu's there as well?
Yeah, Rock beat Zamu and Calvar 3-0 at the local immediately afterward too.
Yeah, well, okay. DarkGenex, let's go into a little about Chef Rock, because he is a player who, like I said, if you know him, you know he is good. But I don't know if everyone knows just how good he is. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about them. What do you know about Chef Rock?
So he's been playing forever. I actually I was at the South Florida Arcadian that he won.
Wow.
Like years and years ago. It was like I don't even remember how long. It's at least 6 years. So he won the South Florida Arcadian like years and years ago. And since then, he's entered like a couple of events out of his region of Florida, but not very many. But so it's kind of hard to tell how good he is off of those results, because like, okay, he's beating like maybe on the box every week. He's beating Diltune, solid players, Equilateral, but not like top 100 caliber players as of right now. I mean, Equilateral and maybe could definitely, get on lower in top 100 this year, but we don't really know. There's not a lot of data. But he's a labber. And you see him on playing constantly. People in DMs talking about Rock, the cookbook, the Falcon Bible, training a new age of the JoJo and the all of those Falcons. They all read the Rockman Bible. That's the cookbook. And it's really interesting seeing because a lot of the labbers don't really also compete either. And Rockman is a player who has labbed the game out to a T and finally enters a tournament outside of his region and just dominates. And granted, like 9th place at a regional in a vacuum, that doesn't sound super good. But if you look at who he beat and then look at the local immediately after and seeing that he beat those people again, 3-0 plus another top 100 player, like it just says a lot about Rock. He is going to be a dominant threat when he starts entering tournaments regularly. Hopefully, if he starts entering tournaments.
That's a big win. What do you think, Edwin?
I think we have seen this play out 2 years ago for a different character in slightly different circumstances. I think this story of Chef Rock, even though he's a bit more extroverted about his labbing and the time he spends improving and playing other top players and friendlies, this sounds an awful lot like Flash sounded in 2021. And I just think as time goes by and we see these players who were quite active before the pandemic, we saw them go to events, we had a general idea of how good they were in their region, suddenly had this massive blow up that happens basically off screen during the pandemic in Uncle Punch and in training mode in Masters chats for whatever reason with all the players that we've been following for the last 5 years. These people like Flash and Chef Rock suddenly bursting out on the national scene. It's the kind of player, or at a big regional in Rock's case, it's the kind of thing where sometimes you hear legends about someone. Like this is one of my favorite stories to tell when it comes to this, right? So I don't think many people remember, but for Riptide 2021, when Flash had his 9th place run, he was a 2 seed in Pleba's pool as the 1 seed. Do you want to know what he did to Pleba? He 6-docked Pleba. Pleba is a very strong player who ended up making it onto the ballot for top 100 in 2022. A year later, didn't end up making the list, but Pleba is not a joke of a player. Pleba is quite good at the game, and Flash ended up getting double eliminated by Wizzy and defeating Ginger that tournament. So and just sort of to parallel that, I want to really take a moment to appreciate what Chef Rock did in beating Zamu. Zamu is not someone who loses a lot, to people beneath his seed. And when Zamu does lose, he tends to make up for it by placing his seed anyway or placing above it. That's just the kind of player Zamu has been. I've followed at least 20 tournaments this year that Zamu's gone to, and that Zamu has either outplaced his seed or placed exactly as he's expected. I think it is quite telling that at a tournament where one of the rare tournaments where Zamu did not place to a seed, that he ran into Captain Falcon Flash in this case. So am I willing to say Chef Rock is immediately top 25? No, because a ranking is a report card based on a volume of significant results, right? But am I willing to call Chef Rock a player that can compete with top 25 players and scare them off vibes? Yeah, I am. I think I am really excited to see what he does if he continues entering more out of region events. I think he has certainly proven himself and certainly shown that all this off-screen training and improvement that he's gone through in the game, labbing or whatnot, I think he clearly backed it up this weekend.
One thing that I will add on to that, I like your comparison from Rock to Flash. One thing that they're extremely similar in is I can say without a doubt that 100% we're going to talk about Rock and Flash way more than the people that actually beat them at tournaments this past week. We mentioned Casey, we mentioned Bobby Big Balls. We're going to spend so much more time. We spent so much more time with Rock that we're going to say on them. If we get a chance to talk about Flash, he had a very good run at Shield Drop. He lost to Smash Daddy, I think 6-0, 6-1. Not particularly the story of Flash this weekend was that it was impossible to count him out. He had 3 straight reverse 3-0s. on top 100 players. Like, he is a player that you can't get out, and yet, it kind of felt like the tiny baby regional version of the Mutaking UGC run, where it's just like, you had your fun, time to lose. But yeah, there was Smash Daddy, which is a player who generally it does not get talked about a lot in discourse or anything like that. But yeah, no, I think Flash and Rock are two players who, it's like, I don't know, when I see this type of people, when I see these players like this, I feel get all greedy, and I use my guy who runs the top 100 voice, and I like, they should enter more. I want to capture them like a Pokemon and put them on the top 100, but yeah, no, players who I think, if they don't end up entering enough to hit top 100, could be forgotten to history. And I think that, it's would be a shame, because these players, Flash, Rock, countless others, are just so fucking good. And it's sometimes, we need to be reminded of it. And weekends like this with Flash at Shield Drop and Rock here, and fucking probably, you could even throw in Chango there, a player who I feel like gets underrated a lot. It's stuff like this that's important for that.
I would like to add another run that happened at the Trail Invitational, because we're talking about all these people who were active before the pandemic, were present, and had these massive jumps in skill that happened off screen or basically out of the public spotlight before jumping in. I want to mention one other player that was actually at the Trail Invitational. And this is someone who I genuinely think they have one of the more sudden and honestly hilarious rises to prominence of any regional player. I am talking about our good friend, a person that we got to hang out with at the Trail Invitational, Beckfin, who very suddenly has found himself like top 5 or top 10 in New England, and leaving this weekend with a victory over JFlex in the 7th place at the Trail Invitational.
Literally outplacing the guy who we gushed about for however many minutes.
Yeah.
Justin, you are an Ices player, but more than that, you are an Ices fan, right? I know that you are a very good player, but your fandom overcomes anything in that type of realm.
Sure.
What are your insights on Beckfin? Beckfin definitely, as Edwin mentioned, a player who don't think that was on a lot of people's radar recently. He had formerly when it was Bean, he had that one weird. Did he take a game off of HBox with Ness or something like that?
Yes.
Does anyone remember that?
Yes.
Yeah. So he had some claim to fame, but in the past year or so, Edwin's right. He definitely has become, increasingly more legitimate in terms of like a bracket threat, and we saw probably his best LAN win and just LAN performance in general at this tournament here. So yeah, give me your thoughts as an Ices connoisseur on Beckfin.
So Beckfin's been rising up in New England online. If you enter or follow online brackets at all, Beckfin enters a lot. Waddle Wednesday, any of DevDog's tournaments, shouts to DevDog. Beckfin enters a lot. And the results have just gotten like so much better, like consistently beating players like Bobby Big Balls, beating Ben. And there are definitely players who no shade to any of them, but like there are players who get those kinds of results online and it just doesn't translate to LAN. Like they get really good results online constantly, and they don't get those results on LAN. Beckfin has been. What is it? Calvar at the sauna. Do you know what the sauna is?
Yeah. Well, so Edwin, what's the sauna?
Yeah,
it's a regional.
But no, my God.
About who is allowed at this regional?
To go?
Oh, right. My top 50. Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
I felt like I like served you a ball for you to hit as like perfectly as a home run, and you swung and missed, and I take it back. I'm like, try again.
You put it on a tee.
I put it on a tee, and you somehow hit the tee itself, and the ball stays suspended in midair. Anyway, we get there. Yes, the sauna, a very a stacked tournament comes in terms of New England, one that allowed anyone who is ranked on the top 50 in New England to go.
And Beckfin goes to the sauna and beats the dominant number 1 in New England, Calvar, in Ices Marth, a matchup that is considered to be one of Calvar's best from all of the years of playing Arcuda / Infinite Numbers. Follows it up with a win on JFlex at the Trail Invitational 3. And I guess to the people outside of the sphere of knowing Flex might think, okay, it's Ices Chic. That matchup is terrible and it's unwinnable. Flex is going to lose that. If you've ever seen, because of Moff beating Jmook, if you've ever seen JFlex's stream, JFlex plays with Moff pretty often and like destroys Moff very regularly. JFlex it's hard to say grew up because he was older than all of them, but he was getting good in a time period when there were 4 PR level Ice Climbers players just having to run into this Sheik week after week. He had to play with Frycook, he had to play with Korn, he had to play with JJM, he had to play with Pudgy Panda, 4 very formidable Ices. And as a Sheik, and as a Boomer Sheik, because Boomers are the kryptonite for mid-tiers. Boomers are amazing at those like really weird floaty matchups, especially Boomers from New Jersey. So Flex is good at the Ices matchup, is what I'm saying. And it was very surprising to most of the NJers seeing that Beckfin beat Flex. Just a testament to how good Beckfin is.
For sure. We had Wave Dash we talked about. We have Trail Invitational. We kind of mentioned Shield Drop just because of how stacked it is. I don't know how much we're going to get into it. But really what this weekend represented to me was not, wasn't AMSA winning Trail Invitational. It wasn't Jmook winning Wave Dash. We talked about how that kind of was not a particular shock. It wasn't really any of the high-level stuff, which I feel like as you get further and further into the summer, where we have a lot of stacked events, it really does feel like that's when a lot of these big things are going to be decided, right? Who's going to be top 10 is decided then, who's going to be top 5, who's number 1 feels like that's like, a lot of people are going to make up ground when it comes to those big summer majors on that. And yet an event or a weekend like this kind of gets lost in all that because this doesn't change anything for the top 5, right? No one's saying Jmook's suddenly number 1 because he won Wave Dash. No one's saying AMSA, winning Trail means that he should be going up or anything that happened here is like going to really impact the race for number 1. And yet what happened this past week, I think is extremely interesting for the lower level players. So like the players in the top 100 who are going to be going to big events and possibly upsetting people. Maybe the players that we see now who are having these runs here might go to a Gommel or a SmashCon or a Shine or a Big House or something and then get a really big upset. Or players who might make their debut in the top 100 because of the very wins that we saw this weekend. So yeah, it's always interesting to see. And I know that when we talk about rankings, generally the sexy thing is number 1, but it's stuff like this where you have players who come into an event and go out completely different, right? It's so cool to see that. Anyway, we've speaking of the top 100, we've got a summer rank coming up. So the SSBM rank summer 2023, the season ends with Gommel in about a month, and we have a couple fun events before then. We've got LACS, we've got CEO we're going to talk about, of course. We've got Fate. There's a lot that's going on here, and I don't think anything is set in stone. It's kind of one of the interesting things is that there are years that we go into June, late June, and we know who's going to be number 1, and it's fine. But this year is not particularly like that, and even a lot of the other players, we don't really know who's going to be top 5. We don't really know who's top 10. There's so much that's up in the air, and that's what makes these events interesting. Is that everything that happens is going to mean a lot for the summer rank that we see. Now, Justin, I talked to you this past weekend, Trail Invitational. I think the second words you said were, do you want to hear my hot take about the rankings? The first ones, I think, were, hey. Or maybe you hit me with a hello. But you are someone who, you've done the ballot for a little bit. You, I believe, are involved with tri-state rankings as well. I don't know if you're involved with like New York and New Jersey specifically, but you are someone who definitely has a pedigree of ranking. And of all the people who do the ballots, I struggle to think of someone who does theirs as early as you do. So you, I think, are specifically engineered to be a great guest for this segment. We obviously, I guess I'll announce it. We all have ballots. I don't think Edwin, I don't think he submitted an application.
No, I submitted one.
Oh, you did? Okay. I must have automatically rejected it without thinking. No, but So we are people who've had ballots for a while. We are people who have ballots here. But I want to hear your thoughts, Justin, because you come to these events and you come prepared. You give me, you say, do you know who's number 52 in the world right now? I go, Justin, it's fucking June. I don't know. Let's talk about some things that we're expecting to see, and let's talk about some things that maybe the general public is not expecting. That you only really find out once all the data is in front of you. So, yeah, let's talk about kind of what the race for number one is going to look like, and then also before that, I want to hear some of your hot takes, Justin.
Sure.
Give me some ranking hot takes.
Ranking hot takes. So, do you want the good or like the higher than expected or lower than expected as first? Well, what's more fun?
Let's do some higher than expected, because I think that when it comes to summer ranks, like a lot of the positions, it's going to be filled by players that we know, but usually these rankings, a lot of people sneak in and kind of go under, not sneak in, but they get ranked rightfully, and it goes under noticed until the ranking actually comes out. So yeah, let's talk about some people that might shock people to hear as in your top 50.
Sure. So people that a little shocking to some. Let me think. Mateo is one of them. He had one phenomenal regional at a bodied I think it was in Michigan. He beat Ginger, he beat KGH, beat Skurzo. Zuppy was at the tournament, lost to Vorpal, and was in losers pretty early. And Mateo ended up getting second at the tournament, losing to Ginger. That run combined with him beating Meds, Mango's Dr. Mario, but that's a can of worms there. But he's had a pretty solid set of events this year. Had a game 5 with Zuppy at the come up. Collision didn't really beat anyone great, but also his losses were Kadoran and Bbats, two players who will for sure be on the top 50. So I think Mateo is a player who's kind of under the radar. Was ranked Mr. 100 last year, if I'm not mistaken. And will be interesting to see him jump up 50 spots, presumably, assuming nothing crazy happens. And he will be at Gommel. It is his home region. So expect him to take names there. That's one person.
Mateo, definitely a player who, when the top 100 comes out, some players take a little bit to secure a resume, and other players do it immediately and make the ranking look outdated the second it comes out. And Mateo is one of the people who did the latter. Edwin, I doubt the two of us got a chance to make a list. First off, how far did you make your list out to? Is it 70 something?
Are you talking to me or Justin?
I'm talking to Justin. Sorry.
Oh, I thought you were talking. Okay.
No, we didn't make make extensive rankings just yet.
Gotcha. So I just as a precursor to this, a lot of the time what balloters will do is they'll follow the results throughout the year, and then towards when the announcements are made and the ballots sent out, they'll start looking at all the results and then making their ballots the day of, or around the time that the ballots are sent out. What I've been doing this year to kind of offload some of the work and just do it throughout the season is doing a rolling rank. So I've just been keeping track of all the results and updating my rankings as the things have been going by. So this has been updating so I just have a ballot prepared. And I went down to about 60.
Okay.
So there's a couple of people I have in mind after that range, but it goes down to 60 roughly. And 31 to 50 are unranked, but they're tiered. So the 10 people from 31 to 40 I would put above those 10 people underneath. And so forth.
I am not afraid to admit that I do not have 60 players ranked just at the drop of a hat, which I'm willing to say. And Edwin, I think it's probably a fair guess to say that you might not have the same thing. But what I am going to ask you, Edwin, is are there any players who you also expect to kind of make a bit of a jump that might kind of fly under the radar?
Yeah, I think one player I think especially comes to mind, and I think with this player in particular, it's because that there happens to be 3 other players in their state that take all the attention away from them. And the player I'm talking about is SDJ. I think SDJ has had quite a strong year. I think if you obviously have to sit down and look and see how their data translates against everyone else's and have to compare head-to-heads and all that stuff. But just in terms of a trend this year, I think what I've noticed following the scene and following locals and regionals and whatnot, I think SDJ's had some quite strong results. And we're talking about someone who goes back and forth with people like Salt and Bobby Big Balls. Bobby Big Ball is someone that I think we could safely call a top 50 pick. Salt is someone that we just saw win a regional over someone who's in contention for top 10 potentially, depending on how much Lod intends to do in a year.
One low tide over Lod.
Yeah, one low tide over Lod has beaten Axe multiple times. So yeah, we're talking about STJ who's going back and forth with a player of that kind of caliber. STJ also, to their credit, has an Axe win as well. They've beaten like Eddie Mexico and Spark at a pretty good Genesis. They beat Axe as well at Low Tide City. You know, this is someone who I think has had quite a strong year, and I think it's gone overlooked a little bit because players like SFOP, Bobby and Salt tend to sort of draw the spotlight when it comes to top Texas players, and not necessarily unreasonably, but I don't think SDJ is far off. And just if you asked me to make a rank right now off the top of my head, I truly think that it would not be unreasonable to consider SDJ for the 28 to like 33-ish range of players. I think they've actually done quite well, and it's kind of crazy that no one's talking about it.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna pick a player who we probably all spoke to this past weekend. I'm not sure about either one of you, but I think a player who might not rise as high as maybe not like the echelon of some of the players who I think they're just as good as, but I'm gonna say Kem. Kem is a player who we know is good. Kem made top 50 last year. I don't think it's a surprise to anyone that when Kem makes an upset. And because of that, I think that what we'll see of Kem this year is going to be a pretty decent summer rank, and I think a better top 100 rank because, when you have a player who goes on the runs that he does and it doesn't surprise you, that's probably a pretty good indication that they are not really making upsets, right? They are just that damn good. So we saw, I believe he got third at Trail Invitational. I think he beat Bobby twice. He had a couple other wins. I know he did really well at
Creed. He beat Crudo.
He beat Crudo. Did he double eliminate Hacks there? He had
he beat Hacks once, but he beat Flex, Mom Money, and Hacks.
Yeah, I think he has a Hacks win somewhere else, a different
short hops.
But yeah. So he has multiple really good wins, and he's going to be going to LACS, I believe. I also think that he's supposed to be going to No John's. Is he signed up for Nightclub? Do you know?
He is not going to Nightclub. He's got something else that day. But he told me he was considering going to Gobble. He's very heavily thinking about it. That's
insane. I mean, he is a player who you have these a lot of like Northeast regionals that he'll end up going to. I don't know if he is in contention to necessarily win them, just because the one we just saw has fucking AMSA, but I don't see a reason why he wouldn't be a threat to, place second to the top 10 player who's there, or even just take the whole thing if there's not a top 10 player, because the way he's been playing has been pretty under the radar. It's not at really big events. And also, it's just like the Fox thing where, kind of takes a little bit more for a Fox to break through in the public consciousness. But no, I think that he is someone who, every single year when ballotters do rankings, I feel like there's always players who you don't think they're as good as they are until all the data's in front of you. And I think Kem is going to be that. Like, I think the ballotters are going to look at Kem's resume and just go, there's nothing but good wins and there's nothing but decent losses, right? He doesn't have any really horrible losses on his resume, and he punches above his weight. I think he's a player who's going to shock a lot of ballotters about just how solid he is. Edwin, what do you think?
I think another player on that note who is going to randomly catch a lot of if you took a look at, I think what you end up doing for yours, just based on talking to you about your ballot, you end up having players that you end up having a list of sets and player names and green, players that are shaded green are players that a player has defeated, and players shaded red.
It's a lot worse than that. It looks more like the ramblings of a madman than that. But yes, that is very similar. It's very kind of you to make it sound that organized.
Yeah, I think one player, again, respective of ignoring context of where the sets happen, I think one player that will randomly catch a lot of people off guard is Nut because of that pre-local before a
Yeah.
major upset. I think that pre-local is just gonna. So many panelists are gonna look at Nuts head-to-heads. They're gonna be like, "What the hell? Like this guy's been top 100, like a very good player, but this guy like we've known who this guy is for like 4 years. What the hell? How does he have a Sunsei win? What?
Two
Like,
Sunsei wins.
he won
Yeah.
the event over Sunsei? What? Like I think that's gonna I think Nut will it'll be funny to see where the panelists put him, because I think that kind of thing I suspect is going to sneak up on quite a few people, and it'll be interesting to see how that's evaluated.
That
A
one
tough nut to
local, he
crack.
beat Sunsei twice, Salt and Polish, for context.
That's actually
is-
an insane.
Yeah. And so Nut is such a, I don't know if anyone's got a chance to talk to him. I have like once or twice, but he's a very nice guy. But even more than that, just like his aura, what he exudes, it's just like so, like hard to hate. He just seems like so like a guy who's loving life. And yet, when I think about the ranking, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna hate him, because he is a guy who not only does that, but he's got like these really out there losses. He lost to Koopa at DreamHack San Diego. We talked about Koopa as a really good player. He lost to Umarth this past week. He lost to Miffy.
He lost to shout out to Miffy, South Jersey Puff, legend of the game, at Collision. John Wick at Battle of BC5.
Yeah, he's just got like a lot of wins that are kind of all over the place. And like he's got those really amazing local wins, and he's got the really wild losses at kind of larger tournaments. So yeah, he'll be definitely an interesting person to reckon with, no matter where he ends up. If he ends up ranked or if he ends up just outside of it, it'll be a lot of trials and tribulations to figure out like a number to put next to his name for every panelist. But let's jump into the higher echelon here, because as we mentioned earlier, I think that the top 10 is not decided yet. I think it's so open. And I think the top 5, with the events that we're going to be seeing with GOML, with LACS, with even CEO is going to have big implications on the top 5 itself, even if it's not like a super major or anything. What we're going to see is going to really switch that up. So I have kind of some, ideas on what I would say, but I know that, Justin, we've talked about your top 5. Do you want to go through who you have as your top 5 right now?
Sure. I think the top 5 as of right now, in regards to who is there, I think it's pretty set by the current tournaments as is. I think Mango is a very difficult player to assess right now, because he basically has like 1.5 tournaments. If you like, because his Genesis was not an actual. I mean, it's murky, based off of his tipped off alone. Like, he's very clearly in the caliber of the top 5 and could very easily be ranked like 3, 2, even 1 based on the rest of his year. But I don't think I would rank him top 5 right now, even though by skill he's very much there. Additionally, Leffen and Plup aren't active, if I'm not mistaken. So they're like they will go to more stuff. So
yeah,
I'm talking as in like right now, which is why like I think it's pretty set to say if the ranking were to be created right now, Leffen, Mango, Plup would not be in the top 5, purely because of activity, even though they could all make it. So because of that, the top 5 right now in regards to like who I would say those 5 players are, Jmook, Cody, and Zain, I think, are fighting for that number 1 spot. They are. I had them in like a tier of their own, the top 3, and it's also still not set. Like, anything could happen. But I had Jmook, Cody, and Zain in that specific order as the top 3, and then 4 and 5 I had Amza 4, Moki 5, but very, very close, and anything could happen.
I think that's basically it right now. And like you say, nothing is set. HBox could win CEO, LACS, and GOML, and suddenly, he might be number 1. If he's not, he's in that tier of the players. We've got a few more events coming up, and it really doesn't even feel like a lot, just because there's only a few of them. but we're so close. Everyone's so neck and neck, and anything that happens can change this drastically. It was like last year when we thought there was going to be a special tour to Panda Cup, and basically it felt like we don't know anything. We might think someone's number one. Anything could change. There was that moment where it was like November or like October, and we were saying an O tour, if they win every tournament from now to the end of the year, would be number one. And it kind of feels like something like that right now, where we've got a couple events. We've got CEO. I mentioned LACS, of course, is going to be a huge one. Fate is going to have some implications if the all the players who are signed up currently go, and also don't go Roy. And then Gommel to cap it off as like kind of the quasi super major, or at least like in terms of top level talent. So we've got a ton going on, but yeah, I think that's right. Edwin, do you have any hard feelings against this top five? Because for what I'm feeling right now, maybe I might put Amsa above Moki, or Moki above Amsa, or something like that. But I think in terms of just like those general tiers, that feels correct to me.
Yeah, I think that's pretty clearly correct. I'm actually quite interested to see how the number 6 to number 9 spots end up
Oh,
because
come on,
I
you
think that
horny dog.
yeah, okay. That's not what I meant, but I think I think that group of Mango, Leffen, Hungrybox, Plup. If you ask me off of vibes to order that group, I don't know. If you ask me how to order them in terms of like what I think their ceiling is, I think Mango is the clear like guy that seems like he has the top level match, like the best path to winning a super major, but
Yeah.
he hasn't been fully present. He's been at events, but he hasn't fully been present in the sense of trying his hardest. Hungrybox has been both fully present and not fully present, which I don't really know how to account for, because he's going to events and he's fulfilling a baseline level of activity, but I haven't really seen anything to make me think that his top level head to heads have an opening in them yet. Maybe he just hasn't had a matchup against Jmook or anything relatively favorable for him like that. So like you said, he could get a draw like that at Gommel or Ludwig's event, and we could see Hungrybox win a major and enter that contention. I mean, Leffen and Plup, I don't even know how active they're going to be in Melee by next year, but certainly by skill, they both seem pretty good. We saw Leffen have a pretty solid battle of BC. He made top 8 at Genesis. We saw, we haven't seen that much of Plup, but from what we've seen, it's not like he took that. Like he still looks pretty solid. Like he had a strong major upset where he was an edge guard away from resetting grand finals versus Cody. He had a very strong Genesis run that kind of went under the radar.
Yeah.
So I'm very interested to see how those 4 players fare from here to now, because like depending on their brackets and depending on how the tournaments play out, we could see them jump into that contention for number one range. We could see them maybe become dark horses for number 1, or we could see them recede away or not show up on the list at all. So I'm definitely very invested to see how those group of 4 players do as well.
Definitely an interesting year, and it makes tournaments fun because we have the kind of established players that we've seen, and then we have the people who could do like we've got the dark horses. We've got Mango, who could win literally anything. I wouldn't be surprised if Mango was number 1 by the end of the year. Leffen, we've talked about for a long time how Leffen can win tournaments, like basically any tournament, and I don't think that's necessarily changed. I do think that any given tournament is still up for grabs for him. I think he's got a lot of things in his way to kind of string all the wins necessary together to do that. But yeah, still possible. And then Plup is someone who, just by what we've seen this past year, like the few things we've seen in the past 6 months, seems like he's playing better than he did in a while. Like the 2021 age where he was, like on the same, like in the top 5 with Wizzy and Zain, Mango, Cody in that kind of unranked list that Panda made. Yeah, feels like he's the best since then. But when we talk about these players, I think it's with the understanding that if they are going to win a major, or if they are going to make a push for number 1, they kind of have their work cut out for them, because who we are seeing at the top have basically been, kind of separating from the pack. And even though you see stuff like AMSA 3-0 Insane, and you see AMSA versus Jmook, and you see Moki doing all this insane shit. But like, I think the top three is pretty definitively clear, and I believe that we all agree on that. So my question for you, both of you, is with about a month to go, basically almost like 4 weeks to the day in the in this ranking period, who do you predict will make number one at the end of the period? What do you think, Justin?
I think it's Zain.
Think it's Zain. Okay.
I do think it's Zain. So
Zane's someone who won fewer tournaments than both Cody and Jmook.
yes, he's also more consistent than both Cody and Jmook, and with more events. That if all of these players are all attending events and Zain wins multiple of these and does not get upset, he's won. It's very, very, very simple explanation.
What do you think, Edwin?
I think it's a Zain certainly has a chance at finishing number one. I think he could tie the major leads, or he could tie Jmook and Cody with major leads. But for him to be number one, in my opinion, just the most likely route, I think he would need to win 2 majors. I think even if he ties Jmook and Cody and has solid head-to-heads, there's something very special, in my opinion, about winning a tournament as prestigious as Genesis, and combining that with another really stacked tournament in Collision that is very hard for me to see overcome in any way that does not involve either a stretch of dominance from someone like Zain or Mango or Cody taking the lead. So, in my opinion, although I don't think it's a lock, I do think Jmook is in a very good position to defend his current reigning spot as the person who's had the best first half of the year so far. So I'm going to go with Jmook.
It really comes down to this thing that we haven't seen enough of, which is this ices in my mind, right? And obviously, Cody could just fucking sweep everything; it won't matter. But when I think of Zain is a player who you look at his head-to-heads, and he has Amsa, which has looked tough, but same for Jmook. And really the issue is like him going 50-50 with Cody and him losing to Jmook. And it's like in a situation where he gets top 3 at LACS and Gommel, and he has to face 2 of those, I think it gets a little scary. And it really just comes down to where this Ices is. That being said, I'm going to do the thing that we do every time we talk about a tournament, because every time we go into a tournament, every time we go into a major, like a super major where everyone is there, I want to be the guy who picks a fun pick. I want to say fucking Mango's going to win or Leffen's going to win. But I have to come down to the person who I think on any given day performs the best against the field, which is Cody. Cody is a player who you look at his head-to-heads, no matter what they may be at any given time, it's really hard to find any matchup of his and say that's really hard. Like the toughest he has is Mango, and we don't even know if that's a thing right now. Like he hasn't played Mango in a little bit, and also Mango, obviously, we don't really know to which extent he's going to be playing. He's signed up for LACS. He could be going to Gommel because he's team captain of their thing, whatever, their crew battle. We don't know if that means he's gonna go Marth or Doc or whatever, or if he's gonna run into someone before Cody. We in terms of like scariest opponents to face, if yours is a player who you might not see because he might get eliminated before winners semis, or might get sent to losers, that's not a bad draw. And for someone like Cody, who's very good against HBox, very good against Amsa, I believe, despite the recent sets, probably would be even, if not favor with Jmook, and probably even with Zain. When I look at a player like that, and I just have to think that is a player who statistically has the best chance of being number one, especially because he already has wins under his belt. I think that Zain is going to be a player who's really, really good. It's going to do so well at these events, and I would not be shocked if he won 1 or 2. It's just like right now, number one's just a little bit further from reach for him. And when you take 2 people who are extremely close, I have to give it to the person who's right now has to win less to be number one. And I think Jmook is also amazing. I'm just, it's the type of thing where we could see CEO with HBox, could likely HBox could win the entire thing. That's a scary thing. It's not that I think Jmook is worse. I just think that like Jmook is entering scarier events than the other two are. So I'll pick Cody. I think that he is my pick for who I see to be ranked number one. And when we actually see what happens at LACS and Gommel, maybe we'll have a better idea of what's going on. But for then, that'll be my pick. Which moves us on to the next thing to talk about. So mentioning Cody, and going to these tournaments, I think that it is impossible to bring up Cody without talking about what has happened this past week. So for those of you who are not in the know in terms of kind of what happens on Twitter and Smash, Cody made I guess an announcement is probably the best way to say it. Cody made a post that kind of lined out his thoughts and feelings on Smash right now and his future with the game. And it was a post that I think is incredibly important. It basically said that he wants to have a sustainable life. He wants to have a life where he can feel like he can provide for the ones in his family who need him, which I think is something that is completely understandable and like a worthwhile goal to strive for. And basically, he said that he does not know if Smash will be able to do that. And currently, it is not going to be able to do that. So he made a kind of a deal with himself where if by Genesis next year, he does not have a way to make this kind of a sustainable life, that he will quit. He is currently unsponsored. He was sponsored by Panda, and we saw how that happened. And then he was sponsored by CLG, and we saw how that happened. And currently, I know that there was kind of some coy posted about Disguised Toast picking him up. But making this post really makes me feel as though, any kind of rumors we might have heard might just be that. It might just be rumors. And it's really interesting to hear something like this. The candor that he delivered, I think, is not something that we generally hear from top players. And it really just does kind of give a split between these new top players we're talking about, right? We're talking about 3 players who we say are definitively top 3 in the world. And basically all of them are doc kids. Some of them, I know Jmook's been around for a while, but even then, I don't think that he was playing before 2013 or whatever. Like, these players have started very recently, and there's a pretty clear divide between how sustainable it is for them and how sustainable it is for the actually like established names in Smash, who have lucrative streaming careers. So yeah, I mean, we're talking about a player who I think could be number one, and not only that, I think in the long term, I think Cody has the best chance out of anyone who's not named Hungrybox to be ranked 3rd all time. Like, if you talk about 5 years from now, if you were to see someone in the top 3 who wasn't like HBox, assuming Armada and Mega are top 2 still, I think it could be Cody. I think Cody has an amazing chance to do that. So when we talk about something like that, it's kind of the understanding that he's going to keep playing, but posts like this kind of make us feel otherwise. So, Edwin, we talk a lot about the Smash scene. I think that's pretty clear. And we have seen so many things come and go. And this year in particular has been a year that feels pretty dour in terms of what we've lost. So I guess the question I have for you is, how do you view Smash in the near future, and how do you view it in the kind of longer term future? Because I think when people talk about Smash, they say we're the cockroaches of gaming, will never go away. And while I do believe it's true, it does kind of take away from any hardships that we're going through in the moment. So I guess I want to ask you, what is the short term future of Melee?
Yeah, so I guess and I'm just going to connect this to Cody particularly with his circumstance and what I know about it. I think Cody is unfortunately in a very tricky position where he knows what the world number 1 of an esport like Melee is worth in the pre, the latest kind of, I don't want to say recession because that seems like the wrong word, but the latest kind of down spiral of esports, right? I think he knows what that meant like back then. And just the fact of the matter is, unfortunately, and he's talked about this on stream, so I don't feel out of bounds for mentioning this. But I think in terms of what he's looking for and what he's looking from a team, it is just not available right now due to the broader state of the economy and just where esports fits in with that, with money, VC money drying up, and the industry wide failure to monetize off content and off competition. So I think as far as where does that, sorry, I just want to connect it back to the original question that you were saying. You were talking about the Smash's near future, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I think in the short term we're gonna see top players struggle. We're gonna start to see a lot of events have to scale, or we're gonna see a smaller scale of events. But we might see a lot of them. I can tell you that based on what I've studied this year as far as events go and as far as typical KPIs for the scene's health goes, we are having a lot of tournaments. People are panicking and realizing that our flagship organizations aren't around, or they're not around in the same capacity that they used to be. So what do we do when that happens? We run tournaments because we want to make sure our game survives. So there is a love for Smash. There's a passion for Smash. There's events being run. People are going to events. But I will say, Wheat, and I don't want to BS anyone listening to this. I do look at viewership metrics like watch time hours on Twitch. I look at things like that. And I got to say that the first 6 months of this year, the first 5.5 months or so of this year, have been pretty dreadful for Smash standards. I would actually go as far as to say that it's about as dreadful as it's ever been in the last 8 years, which is typically or 7 years or so, which is typically when these metrics are recorded. So we're having events, people are going to events, but they're not as much as they were going to in the prime, the 2014 to 2016 or 2017 age or whatever. We're not doing as well on viewership as we used to do, and we're not doing as well on content. So in the near future, this is what I think will happen, right? I think Smash and the overall quote unquote evaluation of Smash is going to be very low. And I think a bunch of people, and we're starting to see this already, a bunch of people are going to see Smash at a low evaluation. They're all going to want to jump in like vultures. They're going to want to jump in. They're going to want to take whatever they can get. They're going to want to try to buy us they're going to try to buy their way into the community for as little money as they need to do to get the most out of everyone else. And I think that's going to happen for the next year or two or so. And then I think Smash will slowly come back, I don't want to say boom, but I think Smash will find a way. We've always found a way for 20 years. There's just too much passion. There's too much interest, and there's too much of an audience for Smash, in my opinion, for it to ever completely leave the competitive sports or content world. So I think in a year and a half, maybe 2 years or so, we may see Smash go through another similar boom cycle, if you want to call it that. But I think right now in the near future, we're seeing just in the broad speeds, we're seeing the evaluation of Smash scare off a couple people, but eventually, I don't want to say the market will correct itself, but I think people will recognize that Smash is improperly valued, and people with a lot of money will get invested in the scene again, because that's just how it always goes. But for people wondering if this is the end of Smash, if Smash itself is not sustainable, I will say individually it is a very risky career. It always has been. It's never been that sustainable for an individual if you're not Mango, Hungrybox, or Leffen. But I think, will the community be okay? Will there be passion to run events, and will people care about Smash? That much I can say will stay the same. But we're in a tough time, and we're starting to see that.
DarkGenex, your system is very plugged into the scene. You know a lot of people behind the scenes. You know a lot of top players. What are your thoughts on kind of the situation that's going on with Cody and how it relates to Smash's, current woes?
So there are some things that I have to say that are very optimistic and some that are very pessimistic. But I think the general theme of what I've got to say is that Smash is not sustainable, but it will last forever. How do I phrase this? People are running, we've seen over the last couple of years, plenty of major, mainstay major tournaments vanish or announce that they are shutting down. In the last, 3 months, in the last 6 months, we have lost BTS, we have lost a bunch of VG Bootcamp majors, so we've lost Pound, we've lost Double Down, we've lost Apex, etc. We're losing Shine. there's going to be no more Shine after this year. But despite that, we have talked about the Trail Invitational. We've talked about Wave Dash. We've talked about Shield Drop. We've talked about a bunch of these smaller majors or regionals that the local scenes are taking place of and traveling from states away or flying to attend. These events will never end. There will always be people willing to lose money to fly top players out to events or just to run events for their local scene, because that's where the passion for the game will end up being. It's in the local scene. It starts with the local scene, it dies with the local scene. Like, people can be playing Slippy forever, but it wouldn't be as big as it is without people passionate about the game playing at the locals. Those events, these regionals, no matter how unsustainable Smash is for the top player, they'll never end. Unfortunately for the top player, it gets difficult. Edwin touched upon this when he was speaking about Cody's worth. Cody, as one of the best players of an esport, is worth a certain amount. Teams are not necessarily willing to give the amount that he is potentially worth because of other sponsors pulling out, because of crypto failing, because of tournaments shutting down, because of Smash's viewer numbers dropping. And it puts Cody specifically, I mean, other players around his caliber of skill too, but he is the one we're talking about here. But he is in a very tricky situation where he is worth too much for in the nicest way possible, a mediocre org, but he is worth too little for a top tier org. But despite this, and I think that we've seen this throughout Battle of BC, where he was sponsored by Eggdog. People would fly him out to events. People are passionate enough about the game that they will bring him to events. He will be able to, if he were to continue playing without a sponsor, I am sure that he would be able to go to every single major for the rest of his life for free. But he can't, like, buy a house with that. He can't raise a family with that. He can't sustain himself comfortably living off of other people's kindness forever. And that, like, he cannot make a living salary off of Melee forever by just playing Melee. A lot of the people you've mentioned before, the established names, the Hungrybox, the Plup, the Leffen, the Mango, they are not making money to the level they are because they are playing Super Smash Bros. Melee 24/7. Leffen makes a bunch of money off of his stream for playing other fighting games. Hungrybox mostly plays Ultimate. He's a variety streamer at this point. Mango can play Valorant until, 2 or 3 in the morning and stay up for 53 hours, and he will continue gaining subs because people love Mango for who he is, not just because he's a god of Melee. And plus, just a gamer god.
True.
And people have grown up watching these players as they have, lived through the Melee scene, watching tournaments, and have come to love their personalities and love who they are and appreciate them as, like, content producers. They have gotten big enough that they are the content. For a lot of the newer names in Melee, including, like, the ones who are sponsored, the Zains, the J-Mooks, and the Codys, they are not, like, they don't have the casual, I think casual is the wrong term, but as widespread of an appeal, so they cannot make themselves the content outside of Melee. Leffen can make himself the content outside of Melee. He's at Red Bull Kumite in South Africa in, I think, 2 weeks.
You know what, Justin? I think you hit on a lot of points that I think are extremely important here. We've talked on the show before, and I've talked in person about how I think right now is, like, the best time to watch top level Melee, and not only because the game keeps improving, just by people playing it, but it's one of the healthiest times. We have such a like an openness at the top level that we really didn't have when we were huge, when we were the biggest. When we had 5 Melee tournaments in a year that broke 1,000 entrants, it was Armada won everything, and then a sudden break happened, and HBox won everything right after. That was 2017. That was the year where we had 5 tournaments that had over 1,000 people, and right now we're probably going to have one. Maybe Big House will break, the past 2 iterations and get 1,000, but I probably would not put money on that. So yeah, it is this interesting thing where I think the players that we have right now are so down to earth, and it's so healthy for the game for them to be so good, and also, like, normal people that we don't say are, like, gods, which is a thing that Melee Stats has always found kind of weird. But the double-edged sword of that is that, yes, when you are not a capital P personality, you are going to suffer, and I think that Zain has found a lane through his content, and
through connections to Ludwig, of course, through Moist Moguls. And I think Cody, you're right. I think Cody's right in that weird spot where there's no real perfect option for him just because of the way stuff is. Esports is definitely in a point where they're not really willing to shell out contracts that they're not 100% sure are going to, recoup their losses. And even with streaming, we're seeing streaming change. The amount that Twitch gives you is changing. We're seeing people want to leave Twitch and go to other things, and how that affects Twitch, because it might be dumb to bring up XQC or Mizkif for people who leave the Twitch while talking about Melee, because I could think a very smart thing to say is, well, Cody's never going to get a kick contract, but it's less about that and more about how that affects Twitch and how it affects their bottom line, and whether or not their policies that they're continuing to change right now continue to change for the worse for these people once they don't have the monopoly that they have, or if it changes for the better because there's a more open market. It's just really up in the air, and I think what Cody wants is stability. And for what we say about Smash, it is definitely not stable. We know that it's going to exist, and that is a talking point that we repeat endlessly, is that we will be around even if it's just Mango and Lucky in a garage in 2040. We know that'll exist. And in a way, I do think that conversation that we that has had, that kind of platitude that we throw around, it's important to say in times like this, but it's also important to say that the reason that it'll it will still exist, but it needs you to exist, right? It needs the person who's listening to this, it needs the person who's watching streams, it needs the person who's watching tournaments, right? This scene will continue to exist because we have people who are passionate, and we will always have people who are passionate who want to give shit, right? Whether it's people who want to throw tournaments, or people who want to throw away money to get people to things, or if it's organizations like the Milwaukee Bucks who just announced Cream City Convergence, who want to throw tournaments, right? We will have people who want to give us stuff, but it's up to the community to not rest on our laurels. And I love the idea that we're always going to be around, but sometimes it might be too comforting, and we might need comfort, but also comfort makes people complacent, and we have to say, I can't sit idly back and let this thing exist. Like, if you want Smash to exist, you gotta give back to it. I know it's hard to say for hobbies to put stuff into it, but if you want it to always be there, you have to put a little work into it. And that being said, I think this year will be very good for Smash. Gommel, I'm not gonna leak too much, but I know Gommel's entrant numbers. It's the biggest Gommel for Melee in terms of pure entrance. Battle BC was the biggest Battle BC for Melee in terms of just pure Melee entrance. Big House last year was bigger than the one before at Big House 9. That was pre-pandemic. Genesis was 12,000 this year. I think Genesis last year is hard to count just because it got pushed back and there was a lot of DQs. But 12,000 would be bigger than Genesis 7 and Genesis 6, which were, once again, pre-pandemic years. It's tough, and the loss of BTS is really tough, but there's enough good news to find through the cracks where, Off-Brand is going to be working with the crew that ran BTS. They're going to be kind of operating. I don't expect them to suddenly make Smash Summit, 15, 16, 17. But I do think that people love Melee enough to want to give back to it, and we should love Melee enough to want to give back to people who want to give back to us. So I know it's a long-winded way of saying that Melee will be fine, but I do think there's importance to talking about, to both understanding that we'll be around forever and also making sure we make the most out of it while it's here. Edwin, what do you think?
One thing I want to say is that I know it sucks that Summit is not here anymore, and I really hate the fact that we always have to bring them up because they were just such a monumental organization from Summit. But having spoken to the people that used to work at Summit and talked to them before and after the organization went down and everything, one thing that I think you'll find if you talk to them, that this is something that they not only believe off blind faith, but just if you think about it, for a very concrete reason. There is money in the scene. people are
Mhm.
willing to put money and they're willing to put effort into supporting things in Smash that make the community a better place and that deliver like something of indescribable value that we'll remember for the rest of our life, right? Like we've seen people we've seen the community put hundreds of thousands of dollars into things like even like Summit or even for charity, right? So I'm not willing to say that the money's not there in the scene. I truly believe that the money is there in the scene. I'm not going to say that there's no risk with that money. There's a reason. There's many reasons why sponsors are a bit wary of Smash and why
Mhm.
Smash's evaluation is a little low right now. But I really believe that even just within the community itself, the money, the passion, the talent, like it's all there. It can be honed. I truly believe that on a long term vision, and I don't think that's just an empty leap of faith. I think there's good reason to think that. That's the last thing I'll say.
I'm gonna bring up something Blair said when we had Downer episode number 2 out of 5. I don't know how many Doomer apps have we had this year. I'm gonna say something that Blair said, which is we're a cheap date. Melee and Smash, I guess, and to an extent, fucking cheap date. You can come in here and the amount of money that you put into the scene to make us love you is way lower than all the other games that people are eyeing up, right? If you want to throw $200,000 into League as an organization, I don't know. Do you think they suddenly love you? Half of them probably hate you for some reason. If you give us $200,000, we're going crazy. We're like shouting your name, right? Like I think BTS is such a it's something that's so close to Smash and was so amazing and wonderful to Smash. But as I mentioned when we talked about it months ago, before they even shut down, was at one point they were an organization that was out of Smash that was getting into Smash, like, and it's so hard to see them as separate from Smash, and I think it just goes to show, like, if you come into Smash and you want to put the money in, and you put the more so than the money, you put the passion in, you will find a place. Go look at Golden Guardians. Golden Guardians is very well loved. I think that we might be seeing another NBA team who's coming into Melee, who's probably going to be reciprocated if the Cream City Convergence goes well. Like, yeah, there's definitely people who are willing to put the money in because people love Smash. People will always love Smash, and generally our community loves it when people want to see things happen, want to support us, and because of that, yeah, I think we're gonna have ebbs and flows forever, but I think we're always gonna have someone who wants to see Melee do well, and because of that, we have stuff to look out for, and I think the important thing is it's on us for the game to survive in between those moments, right? We're gonna be saved by angel investors every couple of years, and it's on me, you, the viewer, everyone else, to just keep the game afloat until the fucking Houston Rockets want to throw a major in 2027, right? Until then, it's just our job to make sure we don't fuck it up. But yeah, that being said, we've got a tournament here that's running Melee that I don't know, we've supported for years. We've got CEO. CEO is a tournament that has been around forever. We talked about Combo Breaker as in terms of how Melee can coexist with the FGC. I think CEO is definitely an interesting one, especially because unlike Combo Breaker, it does seem like it is kind of trending downwards in terms of its importance with Melee, and an event that used to be one of the biggest of the year is now something that's kind of an interesting footnote. So we are seeing something that I think is honestly pretty interesting in just terms of a tournament. It's going to be something that I went into with zero expectations, right? When CEO got announced with Melee, I really didn't have any feelings on it. I know that their past couple of years were not particularly great, and that's saying something because last year Panda was affiliated. It was the first Panda Cup event, and it didn't didn't have enormous success. And the last one they ran before that was literally another CEO Dreamland, one that was affected by COVID, but one that before COVID was not even getting a lot of success. So like
seeing that the last two ones that they threw had a lot of focus on Smash and didn't find particular success made me feel that this one would not be too similar. But albeit, we have Jmook, Plup, Hungrybox, and Wizrobe here. We've got, of course, players like Moth, Panda, Weapons, etc. We've got a lot of strong Florida talent, and we've got a tournament that actually is going to impact the end of the year and the summer rank. Justin, what do you think about what's going to happen at CEO here? Because I think we've got like two very distinct. We've got the top player tier, and we've got like the real killer tier, like the Moths and Pandas and stuff like that.
So before anything else, I really wished you didn't say Wizrobe was going, because I had this very long intro plan where I was going to say CEO is going to be really interesting, because this is the first time this year we have seen a legendary player who has not entered anything in person this year compete for the first time at CEO, his home state, against some of the best. And I was going to be like hinting at Wizrobe, and I'm like, no, I'm talking about the guy with like 4,000, 5,000 rank sets and has never been to a tournament. Grandmaster has beaten multiple top 50 players. I'm talking about Jchu. If you are like Diamond, maybe high plat, you have played Jchu. That's just a fact, objective fact. He has played so much ranked that you have to have played Jchu. This is his first LAN tournament ever. Jchu. He has Panda in his pool. Notably, the Fox who beat Axe at Genesis. It's going to be one of the greatest sets of the tournament. That being said, most people don't care about that. Most people care about the top players and the top end players, and that's reasonable. Very cool to see Wizrobe again. He has a very good bracket. He has to play either Moth or Akir to make top 8 winners, and both of those matchups are pretty good for Wizzy. So it's going to be cool to see him. HBox and Plup, I mean, good, always nice seeing Plup. HBox has been doing really pretty solid this year. Like we talked about the top 5. He would be a very solid 6th. Like he has wins on, he has like, Amza wins this year, Leffen win. So he's doing well. I think the top 4 is pretty set. And there's definitely a story to tell about the players underneath. So the Moth pretty much coming to the spotlight out of nowhere for most people. Definitely a solid top 50 player based off of that one tournament. We'll see how well she does in the future. Prof is another player who's entered this. He is probably going to be top 50. Had a very nice set of runs over the last couple of majors. Very active too. I'd be very shocked if he didn't end up top 50 even after everything. Panda is entered this. He's been active, known for doing very well against Crudo at the locals. He's been back and forth with him for years. And hasn't really done so much at the majors. So I would like to see a good run off of Panda. And then just a couple of other players who just have been doing pretty solid recently. Weapons having that one really good coin box. Akir, Donkey Kong Menace, pretty good collision. I think he beat Skurzo at collision.
Skurzo, yeah.
Skurzo. So it'll be cool to see how he does at this, as well as trying to run back a top 8 from the last CEO where I believe he beat Crudo.
Crudo, yeah.
So, Akir, always a delight. B-Bats coming off of having, he beat Salt at a shield drop. He just won Nightclub beating Hacks and Aklo. So that was
Bobby Big Balls win at shield drop.
And Bobby Big Balls at shield drop. Yeah. So B-Bats has been doing really well over the last couple of literal days. So it'll be interesting to see how he does at this event. One other player I want to call, actually, J-Cubes is a cool player to call out just because.
Yeah, I was going to say J-Cubes is a very random. Yeah, J-Cubes is super random to see here. It's not you usually don't see that guy outside Michigan very often.
Yeah.
It's Florida.
It's interesting. It is Florida, but that's like
maybe there's grandparents there or something. Who knows?
Possibly. It's cool to see J-Cubes active though. He's very electrifying Falcon. The one thing I do want to end on in regards to just like the players I've called out, which is basically most of the top 16 seeds. There is a player who, one of my hot takes, I had this player in my top 50. And you probably wouldn't expect this guy to be in the top 50 just because he's not super active on social media. Most of his wins are off stream. It's Vu. Has a none win at tipped off. Has very good records against Moth, who as we know, had a very good tipped off as well. And the Moff win driving her rank up also drives Vu's stock up. And I want to see how Vu does at CEO, because this could solidify that top 50 spot for him.
A
No, it's
rising
funny you
tide
mentioned-
lifts all ships. Thanks, Moff.
It's funny you mentioned Vu because I thought you were going to talk about Webbins. I think Webbins has had a really quietly, like it really feels like every tournament Webbins enters, he just like quietly leaves at the top 100 or like a top 50 win. Funny enough, I think he's actually like right before top 8 and like top 24 or whatever, or winners round of 16. I think that's what it is. Yeah, winners round of 16. He has a rematch with Prof who beat him earlier in the year. So
Florida always an interesting region. I feel like there's only so much we can like. How many years in Melee has Florida not been a contender for one of the best states? Like the first couple? Like I mean, really, ever since like the Falcons down in Florida started getting really good. Feel like it's just been a constant ever since then, right? With HBox and Plup and Wizzy, and even now that their top tier talent's gone, you've got complete bracket fiends. Like if you see Crudo in bracket, that's incredibly scary. And Panda we mentioned as a player who's like maybe not able to string together all of his wins into one very well known run, but it's like a threat to upset anyone or do well in any tournament. And then you mentioned the players like Wevins and Prof and Moff and Vu. There's these players who end up kind of lower in top 100, or in the case of Moff, not top 100 at all last year, who have been putting together extremely solid resumes. Yeah, it's really amazing to see. And yeah, I think you mentioned it right away. I'm sorry I ruined your joke. J-Chu is gonna be like the nerds. If you are a I don't know why you're listening to this if you're not a nerd. Your eyes will be on J-Chu this term, because it is only so often that we get to see this this kind of online talent, like see if they're if this is the real deal. I believe in J-Chu. I think that J-Chu is pretty young, so it's gonna probably be a an adjustment to actually enter an in-person tournament. But I have very high expectations. I don't know if Panda will be a win that J-Chu can get, just because Panda is a very hard player to upset. But yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing J-Chu here, and hope that we don't see J-Chu stop entering stuff anytime soon. What do you think, Edwin?
yeah, I mean, I will say Panda is a hard draw, but Panda also tends to run off the stage like 4 or 5 times a set. So
and it somehow works.
Yeah,
that's the issue.
Yeah,
for
you
all the
know.
players who run off the stage 5 times a set, he makes it work more than any of the other ones do.
I think one of the funniest things I heard from I forget who it was, but he ran into Panda and was like, "Yeah, I was really struggling against him, but then I realized if I just waited like 10 seconds, he would side B off the stage, or fast fall aerial off the stage, and I could shine him, or he would just die. So I just waited for him to do something, and I managed to get lucky. And he decided not to defeat me that day." I forget who it was that talked about it. It was just very like, oh yeah, I wasn't playing very well, and he was really scary. But then he started running off the stage, so I just waited for him to run off the stage.
Hey, how about this? We're going to talk about who wins, of course. But I mentioned earlier that I think the top 4 are pretty segmented from everyone else, as good as all the other players are. Do we think anyone makes it the top 4 who is not one of the top 4 seeds? We've got, Gatsu here has had some spectacular runs, even, if he is on Smashbox, even post Smashbox, he's had some insane runs. Moff, win on one of the best players in the world. Like, what do you guys think? Do we see someone break into the top 4 who's not a top 4 seed?
So yes, but not for the reason you like, probably, because I'm sure that you're asking this question with the who is going to make the upset over the top 4, when in reality it's Plup is sick and his flight was delayed 3 times and he might just not show up. So yes, I think B-Bats could make top 8 winners. Don't ask about his bracket path.
That's okay. It's fine. It's not like we want to see Plup at a tournament or anything.
I hope Plup goes, though.
What do you think, Edwin? Do you think we see anyone break that top 4?
Yeah, I think that is the just frankly speaking, it's that or maybe Equilateral just is apparent. Hungrybox called Equilateral a monster versus Puff on net play. Now I don't know what that means for his offline chances against Hungrybox, but
He did
maybe
3-0 Panko.
yeah,
True.
he 3-0'd Panko. It's a very impressive result. It's one of Panko's best matchups. Also,
You know,
I mean, maybe
Equilateral.
Prof like Sheik did. No, I don't think Prof will beat Jmook.
Equilateral won in the long line of people who HBox has lost to online and said the most insane things about. Obviously, Alien Sheik when talking about Ben, but those of you who are watching might be too young to remember that way back when HBox lost to a Marth player on Anther's Ladder and said he was the best Marth player in Marth Puff he's ever played. That player who went by the name Smash God.
I thought you were talking about LSD.
Well, he did talk about LSD. I'm going even further back. This was like 2017.
Yeah,
He
this
talked
is
up
really far
he talked
back.
up Rishi. And
Had
Rishi
the-
obviously a very
the
good
money
player.
match.
Logan a very good player. No, he has had a I mean all the players who he's talked up who we mentioned have been very good. So maybe Equilateral will be the next one. I think my point here is that those players didn't tend to beat him on land. so we'll see. Maybe Equilateral will be the one who breaks the curse. I think there's a couple of cool things that could happen, but basically the top 4 here seems pretty stacked that, without a DQ, I do think that they'll probably end up top 4. But I guess the harder question is who wins? We've got a Puff, a Sheik Fox, and a Falcon. This is definitely a combination of characters and matchups that we don't normally see when you talk about top 4 of a major. But we've got kind of an interesting set of players here who kind of all do differently against each other. So who do you got, Edwin? Who do you think wins this one?
I'm trying to pick like a really out there pick, but it just keeps coming back.
Is
to
it calling
Jmook.
to you?
Just
Never mind. It's not calling to you.
No, I know where you're going.
Because I have something calling to me.
No, I think Jmook wins this. I think he's got a very favorable bracket to top 8, beating Captain G's Falcon and the Prof's Marth. Jmook looks invulnerable in that matchup. Then he plays against Wizard, who we saw the two of them have an extremely down to the wire, just completely different level of Sheik Falcon than anything ever played before. But Jmook is the active one and Wizzy is not. So I think so. I have no reason to think that Wizzy should be favored over Jmook, or to view that as anything less than a favorable draw for Jmook. And then yes, Hungrybox is scary, but Plup's lately had his number over the last 9 sets they've played. So I think Plup will probably win that if he plays against Hungrybox now. Just even accounting for the fact that we haven't seen very much of Plup, he still seems pretty good. Hungrybox currently at a bit of a low in his career right now. So I think we'll see Jmook play Plup twice, and we'll see Jmook beat Plup twice. That's my call.
I have something calling out to me. And Justin, I want to hear from you if you have this calling out to you too. But I have visions in the night of a man screaming. And he is jumping around and screaming. And at the end, he holds up a big gold belt with CEO on it. And I see a lot of people who get sad because of that. In my mind, I cannot shake the feeling that Jmook will beat Wizzy and that HBox will have a 3-2 win over Plup, where Plup just does not DI the last up throw on FD to signal back all those conversations we had last year about Plup versus HBox and FD. And then Jmook wins in winners finals, 3-2. Fucking great. It feels great because he's down game 5 versus HBox. He's down 2 stocks to 3 and he makes it back. And it feels like the best win over HBox because, the 3-0 at Shine, we all kind of or whatever about that. HBox, literally didn't have any water in his system. And HBox comes back and wins 3-2, set 1, last hit. and wins 3-1, and the last 2 games aren't close. And we all kind of get a little sad, and all of our weekends, all of our Sundays are just a little worse, even if we convince ourselves that our mood should not be dictated by whether or not a bearded Jigglypuff player wins or loses. I cannot stop my brain from having those thoughts. So for that reason, I have to say that Hungrybox wins CEO 2023. Whether or not I like it, I have to say it. Justin, are you beckoned by this same nightmare, the same call, these dreams?
I don't know if I'd call it a nightmare per se.
I did change it to dreams.
Yeah.
I know that's.
I mean, did you have to ask? I mean, if you look at the brackets, first of all, if Plup doesn't show up, Hungrybox plays B-Bats or Gatsu to get to winners finals, where he will play Jmook. He is preparing for this. He has potentially, like, he knows Jmook is one of his biggest chances at breaking into the top 5 again, breaking into the top 1 again. At Collision 2023, in the VIP room, HBox told a small group of people something, visions of the future. And he said, my stock's low, Moki stock's high. It was after the Moki loss. I don't even remember what he said exactly. This is paraphrased. And he said, one day, if Jmook keeps winning and I keep losing, they're going to seed him first, then I'm going to be seeded 8th. And that's going to be the return of the box. He doesn't even need to be seeded. He is seeded 3rd at this tournament. If he beats Plup or Plup doesn't show up, he gets his chance. He has been waiting for this moment, craving for this moment. Not because it gets him top 5, not because it gets him top 1. Think about HBox as a person. He is content pilled beyond belief. Imagine the amount of interactions he will get following up on his $75 from CEO 2022. He has to win this tournament to get those interactions. Or get 5th. But he will know.
Dude, if he wins, he's gonna call it the 3-peat because he won CEO twice before this. I know it's gonna happen.
He deserves it. He's also gonna call it a major, which I don't know if it is. I don't know if it's not. I don't really know. I am kind of annoyed about people calling stuff majors, and it's like, I don't really care. Who cares? We clearly don't have terms that work for this, and everyone who comes up with terms aren't sexy enough to actually sell them. I know that you're going to be like, no, actually, this is a national. No one uses that term. It's not cool. It didn't catch on. You're either a major or you're not a major. And if that's the case, I don't know. Maybe call it a major. Who cares? I'll say this. If HBox wins it, I'll call it a goddamn major. I don't know. We're due for a box win because, like we said, he does seem pretty clearly 6th. And I think what this is, this is the baseline that he's established. He had the same thing last year, right? He's establishing kind of losing to people who are, in contention for number 1 or, like your puff specialists like Moki or Amsa. He's got those losses. Last year, he had a couple losses outside of like the top 10 or so. He had the none loss. He had an S2J loss. He had a couple losses all over. I think we haven't really seen that, but by that same coin, we haven't seen the patented HBox major win. Happens every single year, no matter how he's playing. He always, turns it on at some point. Last year was Gommel. I think he got Riptide in there. So we'll see. This year he's due for something, and if I'm just purely looking at brackets, I think that it makes most sense right now to be CEO. That being said, Gobble didn't make sense last year. Riptide didn't make sense last year. HBox major wins ever since the pandemic don't make sense. So, maybe he'll win LICS instead. And then Jmook will just win this like through a cakewalk. Anyway, I think that this will be a tournament that, it might not be as fun to watch as, the LICS that we talked about or Gobble that's upcoming. These tournaments that are going to be stacked with all the top players. But it's going to give us a lot of stuff that we haven't got to see recently. We haven't seen Jmook HBox that they end up playing. Plup is a player that we haven't got to see a lot of. Wizzy is a player that we haven't even seen this year. So regardless of what happens, I think it's going to be a pretty cool tournament in terms of just seeing stuff that we haven't seen. And it's going to be a nice little amuse-bouche before the
Summer Smash really kicks in July. Yeah, is there anything else that we want to say about CEO? We kind of, we talked about the visions of HBox winning. I feel like we're probably set once that happens. Let's
There is one timeline potentially. If
Okay.
Ober beats Wizzy and Moff beats Ober, we get the run back in winners.
True.
That's it.
That's it.
That's it.
Well, we'll see. Yeah, definitely would not count it out considering what we've seen this year. I feel like it's super hard to count anything out in Melee right now. We've just kind of seen all the shit where I'm not going to get on my high horse and say that Moff is not about to make winners finals here.
Or that Ober is not going to be. Yeah, it literally anything can.
B-Bats beats H-Box, and then winners finals is Peach Ice Climbers.
Sure. Why not? I can't say it's not going to happen. Here, Justin, we're gonna switch from having some, having you deal some great knowledge. We're gonna try to get some stuff out of you. We've got some questions from our Patreon.
Sure.
So I know that you are a patron. I don't know if you got to see any of these questions, but we've got some. I think they're gonna be fun ones.
Sure.
The whole thing about us kind of ribbing our patrons for getting bad questions. I think they gave you some decent ones. So Edwin, I think you got one, right?
Yeah, so this one's from Algebra, obviously to you, Justin. Does Giga Bowser have any losing matchups?
Giga Bowser loses to 2 characters in Super Smash Bros. Melee. Everyone has seen the Mewtwo King video about Giga Bowser losing to Puff. I don't think it's impossible, but Giga Bowser does lose to Puff. Pretty much every aerial plus side B leads into rest, and Giga Bowser will still die from rest. Giga Bowser has some stuff on Puff, has a chain grab on certain DI, has very good rest punish. Up B is kind of hard to punish, like the up B going back to ledge and just repeatedly going to ledge, get up attack from ledge, up B, out of shield, go back to ledge. It's very hard for Puff to deal with that if you don't mess up, but Puff still, I think, has a superior punish game. So, and it also Puff could camp at higher percents, like going very, very high up. And Giga Bowser's up smash or up airs are the only things that can hit. And on larger stages, very hard to deal with. But the real problem matchup is Peach. Peach's down smash single-handedly beats Giga Bowser. So, every mid-level, low-level, even top-level players, they hate. You jump, Peach down smashes on the platform, you get hit for like 50 or 60, and you go flying. Imagine Peach doing that to a standing character. Like, Giga Bowser is big enough that Peach just blunders him. Impossible matchup. Peach is the true Giga Bowser killer. Peach and Puff, they defeat Giga Bowser.
How about Samus?
You can't really combo Giga Bowser. So, like, there are some moves that if you have, like, a spammable move that's hard to either CC or that can just repeat. So, like, Falco up tilt, Fox up tilt, Marth up tilt, mostly up tilts, honestly. Even Sheik's tilts. They can loop to like 60 to 80 without any sort of if you don't have like crazy SDI. Samus doesn't have a move like that, so I think Samus doesn't really do super well against Giga Bowser.
Well, to follow up with that kind of niche matchup discussion, we've got a question from a player who we actually mentioned earlier. We've got a question from Beckfin.
Mm-hmm.
So Beckfin asked, "What's your favorite niche tech?"
My favorite niche tech. I'm really a fan of the Nana teleport. So if you go to a platform, any platform in the game, and you down B with the ice climbers a couple of frames before landing to the ground, Nana will teleport back to the platform and down B on the platform as you down B on the ground. So as this happens, you could potentially cover like a Spacey's side B to the top platform or side platform by doing this and catch people off guard. It has pretty much no application outside of that, just besides being funny to look at. But that would probably be my favorite niche tech that you could pull off in a normal game without items. If you want to count items, I like the Soul Stealer a lot. I think it's just funny.
Good
Very
pick.
good, very good. And I think that Beckfin will appreciate you mentioning an Icy's tech. And then I think we got one more, right?
Yeah, this one's from Etost. DarkGenex. What player stock do you think will rise the most from now until the end of the year?
So from like this exact moment until the end of the year.
Yes.
And do you mean that by okay? There's like two ways of
Think of it like I'm gonna assume this is fitting into your rolling rank. Like
okay.
who in June 2023 will have the biggest jump forward in terms of where they are at that present moment by December 31st, 2023.
So I'm not going to count people who are inactive, but in regards to this, I'm not counting like I guess content or like notability or such, because like there are players who I could see like for as an example of this, I think that Joshman is going to be a very very high level in regards to like notability by the end of the year, but I don't necessarily see him break into the top 10. I think my answer to this, as to someone who I think will have like significantly better results, is Blue. So if people have been following Melee I mean, you're following the channel right now if you're watching this. If you've been following his results this year, he has been like very cleanly a top 50 player at regionals. He's only not on like the rankings because he's not active, but he's been doing very, very well at Midwest regionals, taking down plenty of top 50 players, really consistent, both locally and regionally. He's like like Edwin mentioned this. He is the epitome of the summit level up. I don't think he will make top 50 on the summer ranking purely out of inactivity. I don't think that he will be going to enough events from now until the end of the ranking period that are considered majors to be active. But I think that he's going to go to enough by the end of the year. And if he's doing as well as he's doing at the regionals against national level players, potentially people in the top 30, I could see him potentially breaking into that top 30, top 25 if he goes to enough. Like he beat the Swooper at Big House seemingly out of nowhere. He had a level up after that. Imagine who he could beat. I could see him beating like a top 10 player out of nowhere. He's really good. I think it's Blue.
Blue's a really great pick because it really just feels like he is continuing to improve. I got a chance to talk to him. I don't know if we'll be able to see him enough to really see all the pieces get put together this year, but I know that there are some plans in the cards for 2024 to be the big breakout year for him. I think he's trying to, like focus on getting all the majors then. But yeah, no, he's beaten Ben at bigger events this year. He's beaten Slow King at locals. He's been able to travel to Chicago once, and you're right, he's been taking some names. One of the really interesting things about that though is that you look at them and it feels like he would, he'd go to like the mid lane and he'd lose to Smash Poppy or like take a set off Smash Poppy and lose in Grands, and then he'll come back the next week or 2 weeks and then just beat Smash Poppy in Grands. I know he was having trouble with Essie, and then ends up, like Essie's little field trip with Preeminent across the Midwest, and has been beating Essie and been beating Preeminent. Yeah, like it seems like these like matchups that he'll like might lose their first encounter, and then if they play again, he ends up winning. The Swooper one was obviously a great win, but what happened after that was a game 5, like super close set with Crudo. And yeah, I mean, he is a player who has not been traveling much, so I think he's a great pick because if he is someone, if we see him more, I have no doubts that he will be able to show up at some point.
Absolutely. I have one pipe dream answer to this though. I'll just go into like for a minute. That's all right. I really hope
Icy's player is it? Tell me.
It's not even an Icy's. It's not an Icy's. So isn't that shocking? So there is a player in New Jersey. He seldom attends events out of his region. He will sometimes pick Donkey Kong inexplicably against players who've won regionals. He'll sometimes go Game & Watch in grand finals of a regional and just win. I'm talking about Miffy. He beat Nut earlier this year at Collision. He went Game 5 with Triff. He was up a full stock Game 5 on Dreamland and decided to approach because in his words, he got bored. He has everything like skill-wise to be a Rockman and to be a Flash. Like he has beaten every single player in New Jersey he's played. I'm including Swedish Delight. He's beaten Swedish before. He's one of the few players who has beaten Swedish. He's beaten Flex. He's beaten Swooper. He's beaten 404, Mott. Every single New Jersey player he has ever played, he has beaten. He never travels outside of his region, and he told me he might go to majors this year after his Collision where he beat Nut. If he goes to at least one major outside of outside of New Jersey, just one, he will be top 100. That's my case for Miffy.
I have a really
I don't think he's eligible.
What?
I have
We'll
a
work on
really
that.
dumb parallel to Miffy. Not quite the same, but just a one player who I genuinely could see, just based on the events calendar, the fact that we're gonna see a big house this year, we're gonna see Riptide, we're gonna see, you know, this Cream City event or whatever happening. I genuinely, yes, Wheat knows where I'm going with this. I genuinely think that we could see Kendrick, or the artist known as Rump Roast, get some top 100 wins. I am
not know
not.
where you're going with that. What the?
Oh, I thought you
That
were
was a
talking.
crazy take.
I thought you were talking.
You were
about
saying
Rump Roast.
ossify.
Oh, Ossify, yeah, yes,
Oh.
Ossify is quite good also. But
You mentioned Michigan, Ohio, and I guess Wisconsin. Yeah, I guess. I don't know. And also, you call it this Cream City, whatever. Cream City Convergence. Get it fucking right, dude.
Cream City Conversions. Okay.
Convergence.
Convergence. I thought it's
Not conversions. They're converting people out there in the Cream City. Don't go. Kendrick is an insane pick.
Yeah,
I'm down. I like Kendrick.
Does
It's
he
an
have to go
unhinged
Game and
pick
Watch?
for sure. It's the Puffin Game and Watch.
He goes
yeah.
Puff and Melee.
Okay.
But the Game and
Is-
Watch is called Rump Roast.
Rump Roast.
I don't want to get into Rump Roast.
That is a
I don't
very
like-
wild pick.
Rump Roast talk will only lead to that whole dude. The Wisconsin's people be going crazy. I don't want to give them anything. Or well, go to the tournament, but other than that, don't feed into all their little shit. I'm still mad at Kendrick and Jake, the Wisconsin TO, for playing the same Avicii song for like an hour straight while they.
Oh
drove to the
yeah,
Smash
they got your ass, dude.
Dude, it was like people who I met in person for the first time. I wasn't about to say like, "Hey, I think you're playing the same Avicii song forever." I just like an hour in, I was like, "Is this the radio or is this like a playlist? I feel like this sounds familiar." And then they cracked up. They're like, "We got your ass before you got in the car." We were like, "I wonder how many times we can play this Avicii song in a row." It was also remixes. There's like 5 different remixes, so I wasn't just whatever. Rump Roast, insane pick. I think there's a lot of players who could make it. That being said, that was a question to Justin, so we shouldn't jump onto it. But we're talking a lot about Melee. Let's for our last segment, let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about something other than Melee, and no better place to do that than Touching Grass, aka our unnamed segment, our well-known unnamed segment. Of course, Justin, you've been on the show before. You know that this is the segment where we talk about stuff that's been going on in our lives that's outside of Melee, because we are all multifaceted human beings with lives, and sometimes we don't get a chance to talk about it. So I will go first. I'll give you both some time to think. And this past week, about a week ago, 2 albums were released that I listened to. I like to listen to new music, kind of get a grasp on what's going on. I went into this not expecting to have any extremely strong feelings, and came out basically thinking that these are 2 albums that are going to make my end of the year top 10. That is the 5th wave emo album, The Wailer by Home Is Where, band that I did not expect to really care about, but ended up really feeling a lot of attachment to that album. And the Pittsburgh noise twee indie outfit, Feeble Little Horse, who released Girl with Fish, which is a very short kind of like noisy, distortion-y indie pop record. I thought both really caught me off guard and have really resonated with me. And they are both albums that I listened to in my pick for this week's Touching Grass segment, which is me having a weekend up in in New England. I have to say that the thing I did that really resonated with me most this past week was getting to go up to Trail Invitational, hang out with my friend Edwin, and then what I did afterwards was spend a couple days in Rhode Island with a real legend of the game. I don't think there's no way to mince words about it. I was with artist formerly known as Dingus Master, basically the wheat before wheat, guy who seeded everything. I guess I don't seed anything anymore. So the wheat before wheat, and then I don't know who the new wheat is, but yeah, The guy who created Wins Melee, a person who I think his impact on the scene is very under the radar, but he kind of led to a lot of things that we take for granted right now, and a lot of things that Melee Stats is going to do. So I got to see him, got to hang out with him, and one of those days we got to hang out with a little guy named Anok. We got to go on to a Thai place that was very good, and we got to go on a little walk around some nature places in Massachusetts. I had a wonderful time, and it is where I got this fucking floral hoodie that the video viewers might see. So that'll be my pick for this week's Touching Grass. I had a pretty wonderful time up in New England this past week, and just got back yesterday. So really enjoyed myself. Edwin, what about yourself? What have you been up to?
Well, other than hanging out with you, hanging out with Ding, going on a hike with you, getting to spend some quality time and everything. I'll try to go to a different direction because you covered most of it. But other
That's about
than
the reason why we are on a Thursday and not a Wednesday.
Yeah, so my spouse and I are very big fans of Jesus Christ Superstar, and a month ago for their birthday, I surprised them with tickets to go see the 50th anniversary screening. So basically, this is the screening of the movie, and before the movie, there was a Q&A and a bit of like a talk given by Ted Neely and a bunch of the people on the original film, right? So I watched Jesus Christ Superstar again with my spouse. We were kind of in this like old theater. It felt like we were just transported back to the 70s. We were surrounded by boomers and a bunch of their children. I'm pretty sure we were the only people like in like our age in the spot. But it was still pretty fun. I think the Jesus Christ Superstar musical is one of my favorites. But I think the movie adaptation is just like it's superb. It's one of the best movie adaptations of a musical I think ever. I've seen it like numerous times, and this time what really stood out to me was the just the richness of the setting. You know, you talk about stories that are universal and transcend so many different cultures and have so many different interpretations. I really think you will not find a better interpretation of that story within like a 70s like countercult like around the time of counterculture like Vietnam War protesty era like I think you won't find a better mix of those two worlds than that movie, and I just think it's really stellar. And
Wow, fuck Godspell, I guess.
I just think that I just think what and also as far as like movie musicals go, I think they tend to kind of enter one of these two directions where they either just feel like you're watching a musical but on screen, so none of the magic of a live performance is there, or they try to lean into like the gritty elements of it, like friggin' Tom Hooper's Les Mis or whatever, which is just like miserable and atrocious and like one of the worst things I've ever seen.
Miserable.
Yeah, Les
It's
Miserables.
as pronounced.
Yeah, so yeah, it's just I strongly recommend anyone who likes a good movie and is into that kind of thing to see the Jesus Christ Superstar adaptation. I mean, like for when they just to give an example of like the kind of setting they have, most of it is filmed in a desert, so it literally feels like when you're watching the musical and like the events of the story layout, it literally feels like they're on a different planet. So when they go to like and like the last thing I'll just say about the richness of the setting is that a lot of it doesn't have to a lot of it is not grand. A lot of it is very minimalist. It almost feels like a dream. Like when Jesus and the rest of the characters in the story are in Jerusalem, they have Jerusalem just set up as like a small like a mini market where people are just selling like all these anachronistic items from like shirts to like random SMGs and stuff to each other, but they're all dressed like they're in the 70s, and it creates this really memorable image that I think combines the best of like the movie medium with the meat of the story and with that whole like cultural zeitgeist that was happening in the 70s. It was really spectacular. I just always find something to love every time I see it again.
Do the part of Gethsemane.
I can't do it right. It's for patrons only.
Dude, you literally like you love to hear yourself sing so much. I've heard you hit this note so many times just to hear it. We were riffing on the song Spoon Man, but if it were Spear Man, and you literally sang it without adding anything just because you wanted to hear yourself sing it. And you
No,
will
I was
refuse to
trying
do
to-
it when it comes to content.
That's
This
such
is
a-
why we're
that-
gonna. This is why
That's such an
Melee
awful
stats will
reading
never
of
be
it.
as big as mobile
That's so
moves.
uncharitable, dude.
It is not a travel up. Just actually, I see
I was
through
saying
you so
Spearman
well.
to try to relate to my two friends.
No, you were trying to one up, and you refused to do it when it could actively
I wasn't trying to
help
one up.
out our brand. Whatever. Anyway, Justin, what have you been up to? We haven't talked to you in a while.
It's been a while. I've been very inactive in Melee in the last couple of months. Probably the most inactive I've been within the scene since I started playing the game. It's been pretty refreshing. I've been doing a bunch of stuff outside of Melee. I've still been commentating. I've still been playing a bunch of ranked. But it's been a very nice breather. Just kind of think of stuff I want to do outside of the game and just live, experience life. I wish you'd asked this question a week later because on the 25th, I'm going to see sumo wrestlers in Japan. Not in Japan. Sorry,
shit.
from Japan. Not in Japan. I wish.
Oh, well.
Yeah,
Still
I have
cool.
I have a Japan trip planned for the end of the year, but I'm going to be seeing sumo wrestlers in
Sure you do.
in New York. So I'm going to be seeing sumo wrestlers in a few days, but that hasn't happened yet. So this is about grass that has been touched, not grass that will be touched. There seems to be a common theme from the last two entries in Touching Grass about things that we have seen and enjoyed, or experienced and enjoyed, or consumed and enjoyed. And I've been watching a bunch of movies recently. Just nothing really spurred this. Just wanted to see more movies. There's been a bunch of movies I've wanted to watch recently that I've never really gotten the chance to because I consume a lot of short form media and not a lot of long form. So I've been spending some time watching movies. And there's two in mind that I've watched in the last few days that have cracked my top 10 movies that I've really enjoyed, both of which have musical elements to them, one of them being a musical itself. And those two movies are The Umbrellas of Cherbourg and Swing Girls. Two very beautiful, incredible movies. I love the reaction.
I love that movie.
Absolutely
It's
beautiful.
so amazing.
The set pieces, such a pastel rainbow explosion, barfing all over the screen, and every different scene is just shot so distinctly. It inspired what I would say is my favorite movie, La La Land, and I could see the inspirations in it. Just the vivid colors, everything is in the movie. Even the mundane text between characters is all sung. The the one theme that is played throughout the movie is just very beautiful, and it's something that everyone can relate to. It's delightful and joyful when it is, and then very melancholy and haunting when it is not. And it all wraps itself out very neatly. It's ahead of its time. I cannot believe the movie was made in the 60s.
Wonderful movie. Also something that I think people might know the song from, because one of the songs was, I think, covered in English and was the end of a Futurama episode.
Really?
There's the Jurassic Bark, I believe, ends with the main theme, or with the ending song, covered in English. And an interesting thing, that the relationship that they have for any indie rock listeners out there is Michel Legrand, who was the main composer, I believe is the grandfather, uncle. I don't know. He's related to Victoria Legrand, who is the lead singer of the indie rock outfit Beach House. For any indie rockers out there, that's a connection. But yeah, wonderful movie. Just I think, yeah, I mean, perfect example for what Edwin was mentioning. If you are someone who wants a movie musical, I think that it does the perfect thing, right? It's visually stimulating. It's also just overblown in almost every single way, right? When it's joyful, it's extremely joyful. When it's sad, it's heartbreaking. Yeah, I did not expect you to say that. I'm taken aback. I really love that movie.
It was incredible. I also see that people in chat are talking about who killed Captain Alex because we watched that in a Discord yesterday. And,
Oh, who killed Captain Alex? Oh, hell yeah! Let's go.
It was an experience for sure.
Yeah, who killed Captain Alex is I remember when I was introduced to that for the first time. It's I want to say Ugandan.
It's Ugandan, yeah.
Yeah,
It's from
Ugandan.
Wak Hollywood.
Yeah, it's the most incredible thing.
Yeah. Well, I find it very funny the reactions that both of us got from two extremely different pieces of media.
Yeah, who killed
yin and the
Captain Alex
yang.
is extremely different.
The yin and the yang that make this show happen. Anyway, Justin, I'm sorry. I'm not sure if we cut you off in any way or by just like this pure love and joy for these two very different things. But yeah, was there anything else that you wanted to mention in your touching grass segment?
My touching grass. Anything else I could think of? Not really. The other thing that I've been doing recently that's been like a long-term project. So I have a lot of like wall decorations, and I've been meaning to change every single one of them. So I've been doing a lot of research into figuring out just stuff that I want to put on my walls and just different things that could replace the paintings. Not that I don't like them, just they've been there for like maybe 6 or 7 years or so, and I just want to get some change most of like because most of my apartment is like reddish hued, and I want to try to make it a bluish hue, like a light blue. So I've got a couple of ideas for like posters I would want to buy, or like there's like a neon sign that I'm trying to get. One of the two probably most striking things I wanted to buy. One of them is a replication, like a replica of an egg. It's just a scrambled egg that just sits on the wall as if someone just hurled it there. And I think it would be a cool thing to put in my kitchen. The other thing is something called non-time, which it's this. I think it's one person in Japan makes these, and they are clocks made out of actual bread. So they like take the bread. I don't know what the process is, but they like preserve this bread so it doesn't like smell or mold or attract like insects or anything. But it's just like this bread that it's you just mount it on a wall and it's a clock. It just looks cool.
Very cool. Well, Justin, basically what we expected to happen happened, and that we love talking to you so much that we have had our longest episode in a little bit. So I don't want to cut you off necessarily, but you know, I'm sure that the people love to hear you talk. You got a lot to talk about. If anyone wants to follow you, where can they do so?
My social medias are very, very inactive right now. I have an idea of something that I've wanted to make for a little bit, and I might make another video again in return for my like 8-ish month hiatus. But if you want to see that, twitter.com/DarkGenex, YouTube DarkGenex. I have a TikTok that's abandoned, but that's TikTok DarkGenex. Pretty much everything DarkGenex. If you want to play TFT, DarkGenex, it's DarkGenex Farts on Riot Games.
Can you not get DarkGenex there?
No, I did not get DarkGenex there, and it was originally DarkGenex Sucks because my username on Reddit and on Epic Games was DarkGenex Sucks, and someone reported me for harassment of my own name. So I got my name and account like deleted, and I had to change it to something else. So I got reported for harassing myself. So that's why it's DarkGenex Farts.
Goals.
Well, very cool. Did you get DarkGenex when the Discord usernames rolled out?
I did.
Okay, there we go. It all works out then.
Mm-hmm. We get the important
well,
things.
Yeah. If you know, if anyone wants to follow what you did, you know what you're about to do, I think that go for it. You know, if you liked his appearance, I think he makes some really good stuff. And also, look at everything else. You have a lot of posts, a lot of things that you put into the community, whether or not they're shit posty or otherwise. I think that there's a lot of charm in everything that you've made for the community.
I appreciate it.
I think, yeah, might as well, you know, there's a backlog for you to check out, and then we can wait around and see if there's anything else that comes out.
I'll also still be relatively active in regards to things coming out. So I'm going to be at, I'll be at Gommel. I will be at SmashCon. I will be at Shine. I will be at an unannounced event, and I will be at my first ever Big House. And hopefully we'll try to get commentary at all those events. We'll see.
That's so sick. It's always better to have you at events. So hearing that you're going to stuff is great. I love to get to speak to you this past weekend because, yeah, it's been a bit. So good to hear that you've been doing well in your time off. But very excited to hear that I'll be able to see you at some stuff coming up. And if you want to see us, you can watch these episodes live on twitch.tv/MeleeStats. We upload these episodes to YouTube over the Melee Stats archive. Melee Stats on YouTube is where you can find our long form content. Twitter.com/MeleeStatsPod. That is where we're going to have our results tweets. We're going to talk about the players that we're throwing to events. That doesn't make sense. One of which is going to be announced tomorrow for the people who are listening live, so you can check that out. And if you're listening afterwards, you can also check out the Twitter to see who we've announced. We have articles over at MeeleeStats.co weekly, such as Wednesday Melee and Monday Morning Marth. And if you love everything that we do and you just want to support us in any way possible, patreon.com/MeeleeStats. That's where you can do so. You can get your questions right on the air. You can talk to us. I don't know. We might. I don't know. I didn't ask if I could say this, but we're thinking about maybe doing a kind of smallish merch drop. That would probably be Patreon exclusive for the near future. So if you want to rock any of the stuff that you see our players wearing, you can do so through joining Patreon. But until then, we will see you. We are going to be back to discuss LACS. So we will be basically, I think we're taking another week break, and then we'll be back to really get into it. Nose to the grindstone, LACS, Fate, Gommel, Summer Rank. Got a lot coming ahead of us, and I could not be more excited to talk about it. So thanks for watching us, and thanks everyone for being on the show. We will see you soon. Peace.
See you guys.
See ya.